Alright, so we've completed all of the main routes. We've done Saku's route. We've saw technically the ending. Now we're moving on to New Division, and then we're going to move on to the true ending. So I've had to think about which one I want to do first, because if we click on New Division, we can either do Hishia's or we can do Mitori's first. And I had some good comments that kind of like explained what those routes go through and like kind of the benefits of doing them. I think I'm going to do Hishia's first. And the reason I say that is because Hishia's is kind of going over the events that we just covered a little bit, and we're going to get some more of Hishia's backstory, which I'm really excited to know more about her because she is my number one girl for many reasons. And I think I'm going to save Mitori's for last because Mitori has been just kind of this mystery for a while, and as much as I'm excited to know more about her as well, I think I want to save that for the last ending before I do the true end, because I think that is going to help us transition from Mitori's route into the true end. I've heard that there's some things that kind of correlate between them and give you a better understanding, so I think I want to save that one for last, because I think it's going to be really good, and I'm excited to see Mitori again. But I think we're going to start with Hishia right now. I think that's the way I want to go. So, like I said, I believe this is going to cover some of the events that Saku's route did, but obviously from a different perspective. So we'll see how this one goes. I really don't know what to expect. The rounded scenery of night, a road slithered between the hills like a snake. It was a place far from the city. There was no lights beyond that of the moon. A cross reticle was floating in my vision. My head was as cool and clear as ice. Not a blink, even the slightest movement of the gun would become a sure miss for the bullet. Faint, silent breaths that seemed to melt into the surrounding forest. Breathe in, breathe out. Temperature, moisture, wind speed, gravitational forces. Snipers had to consider every single factor to be successful. The world didn't exist beyond the circular point as big as a coin. Everything outside faded from consciousness.
全世界78億の自助ファンの皆さん、こんばんは。愛され系自助の輝ける星、石谷森です。
I'll say, isn't there only 7.8 billion people in the world? Apparently, we're all maid fans, okay.
人使いの荒いご主人様の命令で、スクール近郊の森の中に潜伏し、狙撃の機会を伺っているところです。
Dang, apparently Hishia is a sniper too, what the heck?
バイポッドで固定したライフルのスコープから一旦顔を外して腕の時計で時間を確かめます。そろそろですね。そう、最近お気に入りの深夜アニメ開始時刻になろうとしていました。
Dang. Freaking Narita doing Hishia wrong right now, making her miss her favorite late night anime. Crazy.
ど田舎の奥島では放送されている番組も少ないのですが、ケーブルテレビや動画サイトに公式配信されているものもありますので、シーズンのメインは抑えられます。
I know, I think about how good we have it here in like the United States or maybe even other countries as well. Like, we can literally just like watch it either like the day that it aired or the next day, and you really don't have to worry about finding your favorite shows because there's only a few websites that you would even get anime from, and they have pretty much anything you would want to watch. So it's like you really don't have all the messiness that I feel like Japan has when it comes to watching a show. You have to watch it on like a certain network, and then they also have like a really convoluted system for like Blu-rays and things like that. They separate it into like 2 or 3 episodes per Blu-ray, and they charge you like $70 for each one of those. Ridiculous. Like, we don't have none of that here in the United States. I think the idea of spending $70 for a whole anime is crazy. I would never do that.
ここで視聴というわけにはいきませんが、録画はしているので安心です。さて、事前調査のタイムスケジュール通りなら、スクールを脱出した花園武史があの道を猛スピードで降りてくる頃合いでした。
Oh, frick. So we're like back to, what is this, like the end of the common route right now?
おそらく車で逃走してくるでしょう。その車両を狙撃して奴の足を奪い、成田様との面会に向かってもらうのが 今宵のヒシアのお仕事。
I like how that's exactly what like a Toyota Corolla looks like, but like it doesn't have the Toyota logo on it.
人使いの荒い主人です。
It's like it's so
こ
obvious
の
what
大
it
役
is.
の獲物はレミントン M700。 精度を要求されるお仕事ですので、ボルトアクション式を選びました。あらゆる下準備はすでに済ませてあります。ヒシアとしてはドラグノフの方が慣れていますが、手に入りにくかったのでやむを得ません。この国では米軍流れの武器が一番お手軽ですからね。
I wonder if there's truth to that. Is it really easy to get American weapons in Japan? Like compared to other things?
アメリカ製の銃器はロシアの武骨さやドイツのスマートさがなく、どこか大味な感じがして手のひらにぴったりフィットしてくれません。個人的にはいまいちです。
Well, scuffed. She doesn't like our weapons.
まあドラグノフは頑丈でも精度は高いとは言えないので、スペックだけならもっと適切なものがあるでしょうが、実戦で使うには慣れや相性も重要ですから。ヒシアの故郷では北の大きな国からいろんな武器が大量に持ち込まれたりしていました。日本のことわざにある昔取ったカラカサというやつですね。
I really wish I knew more about guns because they like to talk about guns in this. And I don't really know what they're talking about most of the time. Like I understand like the basics. I've heard of some of these weapons before, but like I don't know the different feeling of those guns, right? I can't like understand her comparisons.
夜間山道を爆走してくる車両へのピンポイントスナイプ。ぶち殺すだけなら簡単なのですが、花園と決着をつけるのは成田様。殺さず足止めとなると狙撃の難易度は格段に上がります。
I know. Hishia's such a good maid. Like she's accepting this like harder than normal task. It's like, okay, yeah, killing him would be easy, right? But like I don't want to kill him. I just want to stop him and then lead all the events to where Narita ends up killing him. You have to like plan this out. You have to be like this game master where you're just kind of like setting up things.
ご主人様みたいなびっくりドッキリデタラメ人間と違って普通の次女のヒシアとしては苦労が多いです。とはいえ今夜の想定距離は最大800フィート。ヒシア的には目をつむってても当てられる距離ですが、まあ本当につむったらダメですけどね。
So it's something she could do, but she's not gonna try it. I like that. She's just like humbly bragging right there. It's like, I could do it, but I'm not going to.
夜間暗視装置は使いません。ものにもよりますが、かさばって鬱陶しいのです。夜間狙撃とはいえ、今夜はほぼ満月。素でも大丈夫。細かいことは風が教えてくれます。ヒシアには結構たくさんの姉妹がいて、全員できるウーマンでしたが、狙撃はヒシアが一番お得意でした。懐かしいですね。
Dang, so you had a family of like, I mean, for lack of a better word, killers.
いよいよ開幕の時間が迫ってきました。お話はここまでにして、お仕事に集中しましょう。
A nocturnal bird let out a call and the wind stopped. A moment later, my deadbeat master. I love how she just insults him. Like, she has, like, the utmost respect for him, but at the same time, she's just like, yeah, he's a deadbeat. It's like, it's so funny. Shinri Narita appeared, having broken out of the Tenkawa Noble Academy, the enemy stronghold.
お待ちしておりました、成田様。
予定よりも5分ほど遅れてしまったが、修正可能な範囲内だろう。
He'd appeared without making a single branch make a sound. He was as absurd as usual. Even people like me had trouble sensing him.
ヒシアが鬱陶しい虫刺されと対決しながら森の中でスコープとにらめっこしている間、ご主人様は楽しい夜会で美味しいお料理と格闘中だったというわけですね。
I mean, I suppose that's accurate.
人聞きの悪いことを言うものではない。夜会の音楽に耳を傾けながら揺れる神の宝満を神秘する閲楽。いわば芸術の魅力から離れられなかっただけなのだから。
Ah, yes, divine breasts. Those are truly distracting for a man. He was extremely awful as a human, but this kind of absurdity was about what I expected of him, so I didn't even point it out. Oh, I love this so much, just hearing her thoughts about things. It's great.
状況は全て滞りなく
Because she thinks that to herself, and then she's like, okay, yeah, it's all going to plan. Oh, I love it. In a graceful, maid-like manner, I presented him something wrapped in a purple cloth. He accepted it with a dignified, know-it-all face. Under the cloth, there was a gun. A Luger P-08, to be exact. The retro weapon was a special tool that would be used for tonight's ritual. A ritual of revenge. It was a sacred act that Master Narita tried to commit, as well as the reason why he changed his name and returned to the country of Japan, the place of his blood-stained past. It was so he could deliver the hammer of justice into Kurofune and his co-conspirators, who betrayed and killed his family.
今夜ようやく本当の意味で待ちに待った舞台が始まりを告げるのだ。
He whispered that as if to convince himself, and there was no sign of doubt in his face. Over the past 7 years, he had never once wielded his power for the sake of his hate, for in his mind, that would mean becoming the same as lowly beast he had to consign to oblivion. That will change tonight. In fact, all that happened until now was for the sake of what will happen from this night forward. He had truly resolved to do this. It made him seem dependable, but I also felt a hard-to-express desolation in my heart. It was much like a hole in my heart, though, which dry wind blew freely. I had no time to think about something so unnecessary. The time was nigh, so I would merely wait for Hanazono. I became prone to prepare for the Sha and fix my sights on the road. As I prepared, I looked up to see Master Narita clench his fist hard. Was he really set on doing this? Wasn't there another path he could still take? That thought made me unable to stay silent.
成田様計画の変更はございませんか
ない。すべては定められた通り。この夜より役者どもを競争させよう。
Alright, let's frickin' do it.
承知いたしました
Indeed, he wasn't hesitant at all. Maids were meant to serve their masters, and I would become akin to his limbs and stay with him until the end. And that is why you are best girl. Hanazono's car went down the road. Everything was proceeding as planned so far.
様子がおかしい。追われているのか。
The car was going at breakneck speeds. He must have considered the possibility that he might have been chased even after he broke out of the academy. Where is the chaser, though? I did not see any cars behind him or helicopters above.
追っているのはチュパカブラの親戚でしょうか
Frickin' I hope not. Like, frickin' the Chupacabra scared me so much as a kid. I watched too many shows about it. When Master Narita and I had gone to South Africa, we had actually encountered the Chupacabra, the fearsome creature with a taste for human blood. Besides that, there was the giant eyeless creature that crawled around deep underground, the island-sized ship that floated in the Atlantic. The world was still full of wonders many didn't know about. Wait, what? Okay, apparently they've seen the Chupacabra and other things. Was it possible that the chaser was inhuman?
まさかだ。
An instant response, albeit sprinkled with uncertainty. He was right, however. Wonders of this kind could only exist because they found a home outside the realm of man. Something like that can never be this close to a human settlement, rural or not.
成田様
Before I could even point at it, a small silhouette fell down from the top of the cliff with the dexterity of a primate. With unbelievable ease, it went down while using the trees as platforms before beautifully landing on the car that was going at 100 kilometers per hour. What was that? I couldn't tell from the distance. It was about as big as a human, but these movements certainly didn't fit the human template.
撃ち落とせ。私は花園を追う。
Master Narita was quick to decide what to do next. Whatever the thing was, regardless of whether it was from the academy or not, it was an enemy for merely targeting Hanazono.
かしこまりました
Master Narita kicked off the undergrowth and ran, almost fell down the steep slope in order to catch up to Hanazono. I had to do what I was ordered to do with absolute perfection. If I stopped Hanazono, he would end up in the monster's hands, and that would go against our plan. I had Hanazono's location down. The best timing would be the next sharp turn, which he would have to slow down whether he liked it or not. Fixing sights a different color crossed the reticle, which told me that the moment it would come weren't my eyes, but skin, the whispers of the mountain wind. I pulled the trigger without hesitation.
命中
A muzzle flash appeared in the darkness between the trees, and the fired bullet hit the mysterious target. I pulled the cocking bolt to take out the shell and prepare to fire again. The darkness still concealed the silhouette's identity, but it didn't matter as long as it had died. Yeah, but we're talking about the SSDs. Those things don't frickin' die, ever. Thanks to the energy from the sharp turn, the shadow fell off the roof of the speeding car. However, it wasn't where it was supposed to have fallen.
いやいやどんな化け物ですか
It suffered a direct hit from a rifle bullet and fell off the car, yet it didn't lose any mobility and somehow avoided becoming mincemeat on the asphalt, letting it escape. It was very surprising. In fact, any normal human would have definitely died there.
びっくりドッキリ生もののようですね
Not thinking anything more, I picked up the Remington and ran. A monster far beyond the norm wasn't something I liked having as an enemy serving the academy, but I had completed my goal for now. However, my original job still remained, so I went to the second sniping nest I'd prepared. Thanks to that monster, I had lost my chances to shoot Hanazono. However, if he made it out of this night alive, he would become a lot more defensive, possibly escaping where it would be difficult to target him. I wouldn't allow that. I would do all it took to bring the target to Master Narita.
ご奉仕させていただきます
You are more than welcome to serve me, anytime. I jumped off the steep slope and grabbed onto the trees on the way to slow myself down before landing. I sped through the darkness and broke through the grove until I came across a mountain pass. I didn't have the time to lay down in the sniping nest, so I merely kneeled, excuse me, turning my left knee and arm into support for the gun. I readied the rifle about the same time as Hanazono's car appeared on the site. I instantly stabilized the gun and pulled the trigger.
命中
I like how she has to say hit each time.
狙い通り暴走する花園の車のタイヤを吹き飛ばしました100キロ近い速度で走行中に突如制御を失った車体は大きな弧を描いてスリップしながら道路の外へガードレールを打ち壊しながら草むらへ出て道路との段差で派手に横転し天地逆さの状態で地面をこすってようやく止まりましたこれであとは成田様のされるべきことヒシアも手出しのできない聖なる儀式です空にはほぼ満ちた月がさえざえと輝いて我々のアクセクすべてを見下ろしていましたお気に入りの深夜アニメシリーズはそろそろワンタイトルも終わりここから本編の始まりとして景気よくオープニングテーマが流れ出している頃でしょうか
Dang, we missed the opening. I don't know about you guys, but I always listen to the openings. Like I love good music, okay? Especially if it's got like some good visuals to go with it. I wonder what this movie is gonna bring. I wonder if it's gonna be different. Fight your destiny, I like it. Oh, there's Kurofune. Hello, lady. I like it. I'm trying to think, is this the same video we saw before? Like, I think it was at the start of, I don't know. Or no, it was at the end of the common route, I believe. Dang, that girl's name is Lime. What the heck? Wait, his name is Charlie? There's a Japanese guy named Charlie? That's dope. Yep, I definitely remember some of these moments. This is a nice little recap of some stuff that's happened so far. Oh, yeah, I remember that fight. That fight was dope. I just wish they would have talked a little bit less. Because it's like, dang, it was so cool, like, seeing them fight. And then, like, he was using Genma techniques to take him down. That was cool. Narita had, like, quite the challenge there. But I'm not sure what to say. I'm like, I've kind of already seen this. I don't think it's different. I think it's the same one. Or at least it looks very similar. I don't remember this part. Yep, remember that moment. Gosh, Soroko just pulling out a shotgun and just crazy. That was a creepy moment. It's really cool watching this though after. Oh yeah, I forgot there's like a little bit of animation in this. I think this visual novel would be awesome as an anime. Like they should do it. I think it would be really dope. I don't know how they would do all the different endings though. I noticed a lot of anime don't like to cover like multiple endings just because I feel like that'd be very confusing if you're watching. But oh, I would love to see it. Okay, we got a little bit of an intro into the route. I mean, it's all kind of stuff we've seen. It didn't even have Hishia in it, at least as far as I
十分
remember.
な時間を置いてから成田様の後を追いました。復讐の時は成田様が過去と対話する大切なお時間。事情ごときが邪魔してはなりません。決着の場へ向かいたくなるのをこらえ、木立の闇の中で佇みながら待ちます。やがて。
A gunshot rang out into the night sky. By the time I came to him, he had already finished what had to be done. The gun in Master Narita's hand was releasing smoke, and next to his feet, there was Hanazono's dead body.
隠して第一幕は終わりを告げた。Hishia、すぐに次の舞台の準備にかかる。
Gosh, this moment was so great. I loved it. Like, I really liked just the dark twist at the end there. It was so good.
はい、成田様。
Master Narita was staring right at Hanazono's death mask, a face full of shock and fear. It was as though he was trying to take in all the hate from the person he had just murdered.
成田様を見ていると、どこかが小さく痛むような気がします。
Yeah, I feel like Hishia probably realizes that this is probably going to affect him negatively.
いつの間にか自分の胸に手を当てていました。ここに来て、イシアこそがまだ完全に覚悟を決めきれていなかったことに気づいてしまったのです。
It's far too late for me to philosophize about the value of life or whatnot. I had already taken too many lives to count. In fact, when it came to number alone, my hands were far more bloody than Master Narita's.
恐れていたのです。成田様が本当の意味で復讐者に変わってしまうのを。
I didn't quite understand the intensity of the feelings which drove a person to swear to kill another at the expense of oneself.
あるいは、もしも。
I considered this and that, but I could only imagine the piercing pain in the heart. If that was all he ever felt whilst living all these years, revenge must have been the only true path for him. However, I wondered if he could find a way of life that didn't lead to him burning as firewood for the flame of vengeance. However, that was no longer possible.
成田様は振り返らない一歩を踏み出された。 ヒシアは付き従うだけです。
Just like Master Narita could do nothing but move forward, I also had no other way of life. I was quite awkward, after all. I gave him the most maid-like bow.
ここは我々の旅路の果て。長い遍歴を経て行き着いた。そろそろどうしてヒシアと成田様がこんなところにいるのか説明するのに少し時間を遡りましょう。まあ大雑把な説明ですので、詳しいことを知りたい方は各自別途資料をご覧ください。それでは回想です。
Okay, she's just breaking a wall here. Just like, oh yeah, you should refer to some other materials, but anyways, here's a flashback. I love it. Oh, and I get to go through all the endings too, like the bad endings. The Pero Chuman shows. I get to go through those soon too. I've been kind of like saving those, so I don't watch all of them at once. A pleasant black, the color of the sky. It wasn't quite pitch black, for there were some city lights giving it a brighter, different hue. Shinri Narita's loyal maid, Mori Hishia, was walking through the darkness with casual steps, as though strolling around.
Hishia, 見たまえ。日本の星空だ。成田とは違って、ここではよく見える。
ああ、そうでございますね。
Her master was acting as he pleased, just like he always did, and Hishia gave him a response that was half-hearted as usual. It wasn't like she was ignoring him, but they'd had exchanges like these for years now. Okushima in Tea Prefecture was a rural town, like many others in Japan. It had a population of only about 200,000 people, so the light pollution was far smaller than it was in Chiba or other cities on the main island. Because of that, albeit not quite full, the sky had lots of stars in it. The flickering lights were akin to gems decorating the sky. The one lording over them was a 16-day-old moon, which rained a unique orange light upon the surface. It was late at night, so the silence was strong as well. The scattered forest made no sound, and you couldn't even hear any bugs. The master and the maid were walking on a path far from the town in its lights. There was no hesitation in their steps, making it clear that they knew where they were heading.
7年ぶりの故郷の星。階級の心地とはこれか。飛行機の手配を誤って深夜に到着しなければ、こんな気分を知ることもなく、かの地へ着いていたな。
That was Mori Hishia's first time here. Or this was her first time here. But to Shinri Narita, this was where he was born. Though he had a different name back then. It had been 7 years since he had been chased away from his homeland, and after a long, winding road, he finally returned, bearing only a single goal in his heart.
忠実で愛すべき次女の失敗のいちいちをあげつらう慎みなき主人を持てて、ヒシア、とっても幸せです。
これでも褒めているのだよ。
はーん、とってもうれっぴー。ご主人様に褒められちゃった。
I love just the blank look on her face as she says that.
君が喜んでいるのを見ると、私も嬉しい。喜怒哀楽を包み隠さず明らかにするのが、人としてのあるべき姿なのだよ。
皮肉を理解しやがらないご主人様の面の顔の厚さに、毎度ながらヒシア、いいってなっちまいます。
It was originally planned that they would arrive here tomorrow morning. Thanks to a rare mistake from his capable maid, they had arrived half a day earlier while it was still night. Normally you would expect them to find a hotel and wait for the morning there, but instead Narita chose to walk to his destination, the Tenkawa Noble Academy. It was far too late for buses to be active. Reasonably, it wasn't close enough to go there by foot, but Hishia's master was quite a stranger to common sense, so he didn't seem to care. They left the town behind them and the path they walked eventually became sloped upwards. It was more or less a mountain pass now, but Narita continued without slowing down or showing any signs of fatigue.
これは言うなればあれです。ご主人様にしては珍しいですが、流行っておられるのかもしれません。
Gosh, this is such a throwback to the start of the game. She walked 3 steps behind him and pondered. As long as his road seemed, it was nothing compared to the intense, difficult path he walked. It was akin to going shopping in the neighborhood marketplace. And this journey of his had changed Hishia's without repair. Dry air, the smell of burnt sand, gunfire instead of chirping birds, and sudden, unreasonable deaths that came from nowhere. That was the kind of land Mori Hishia grew up in. Her childhood memories were vague, and all that she really recalled was that she lived off tasteless rock-like bread. She was bought by her first master before she even knew left from right. There were people who had a thing for girls and boys far below their adolescence, but for better or for worse, Hishia was valued in a different way. It led to the man building her up into a tool, a beautiful weapon. What he saw from her was killing prowess and the ability to protect him. Her days were devoid of human emotion. The master didn't need anything like that either. After all, who would want their swords and shields to have their own ideas and convictions? Hishia wasn't the only weapon, however. Some were dysfunctional in certain ways, but their fate was quite simple. Like any broken tool, they would simply be disposed of. Hishia had been in many dangerous situations. In her memory, she found a teacher wearing a face akin to rock salt and giving her orders from a hard-to-understand voice.
今日、お前は失敗した。食事はその宇治と雲だ。
Ew, I mean, that doesn't sound good.
今飲んだ水には薄い病毒が混ぜてある。高熱と嘔吐と下痢が出るだろう。3日後の出発までに治しておけ。
Wow, what a dick.
この娘と話をしていたそうだな。丸1日時間をやる。できるだけ時間をかけて殺せ。
Hishia did everything she was told with little issue. She was a gun. Her master's orders came above all else. As a tool made of metal, she would draw the blood of his enemies. Oh, how happy she would have been if she could have become that. For better or worse, Hishia had an aptitude, and that wasn't just the talent that had her master turn her into a weapon. She had a talent for creating herself regardless of how hopeless was the world around her, how little teaching she received, how inhumanely she was treated, and how little light there was in her life. Perhaps it was a bit juvenile to be called a personality. Faint as it was, Mori Hishia was the only one among her sisters to remain a non-weapon. Her trigger fingers didn't hesitate, but her weapon still ached. Even if she didn't hesitate to... Wait, her heart still ached. Did I say heart? I think I said something else. Even if she didn't hesitate to stab someone, she knew that a life taken couldn't be returned. At some point, her memories became vague. She eventually began processing everything like she was a part of the audience cheering for the tragic comedy of life playing out before her. That was the only way she could bear it all. The empty season that felt like a long breath of sandy wind seemed to continue forever. And then at the end of the day, she stopped counting. A hand reached out to her.
ところでヒシア。
She was brought back from her trip down memory lane by the strangely emotional voice of her master.
どうかされましたか？傲岸不遜わがままなご主人様にしては心配そうな顔をしていらっしゃいますが。
Wow, okay.
踏んじゃいましたか？
いや、少し疑問に思っただけなのだよ。この国の学園では就職時非常な混乱の中で学生同士が食物を奪い合って血で血を洗う争いを繰り広げると以前読んだことがある。
Despite having no opening, Shinri Narita was very rough around the edges. Combined with his cruel childhood, it made him quite detached from anything obvious. If Hishia wasn't there to fix some little details, he would be a truly sad individual who couldn't function in society. Thus, Hishia had perfectly mastered the art of basic living in Japan, all so she could help her helpless master. After fixing her posture in an orthodox UK retro style, the maid responded.
簡単でございます。学園という世界にはスクールカーストと呼ばれる過酷な階級性が敷かれているのだとか。搾取される最下層の学生たちは日々の職を得るのも簡単ではないのでしょう。それが悲劇につながっているのではないかとヒシア考える次第です。
悲しいことだな。このような豊かな国でも食料をめぐる争いが少ないのか。
I'm not aware of anything like that happening in Japan. I mean, unless you're like in an anime, maybe. Her master's face became serious, filling Hishia with pride in her own answer.
食料をめぐる争いといえば、以前難民に食料を届ける依頼を引き受けたことがあったな。反政府軍の戦線を突破するのに大層苦労したが。
確かにありました。いざ物資を運び込んだら、それを狙って野党まがいの連中までヒャッハーとやってきやがったのをご主人様が血祭りに。食をめぐる闘争の無残さとご主人様の非常さにヒシア大粒で涙いたしました。
I don't know, I can't really picture her crying her eyes out. Maybe when she was really young.
あの時平和主義的にネゴシエイトをしていた私の後ろからいきなり迫撃砲を撃ち込んだのはヒシアではなかったがね。
Pacifist, he says.
ご主人様が連中を止めろとおっしゃいましたので、できたメイドが意を組んだのです。ほら、ああいう世紀末な連中が話してわかるわけねえじゃないですか。時はお高いと申します。無駄な時間は省略で。
君は実に良いメイドだが、もう少し一般常識を学ぶ必要がありそうだな。
Oh, that's funny coming from you.
ご主人様にそれを指摘されるのはヒシア超ショックです。
I want to die.
しかし明日から学生の身分になる私は再び過酷な食の闘争を行わねばならないわけか。
I can't tell if you guys are being serious or just really dumb.
かの学園は超ゴージャスな成金趣味なので、残念ながらそのような場面は見られないと思います。せいぜいロスのタッグで並ぶ程度ではないかと。
それは一安心だ。貴重な日本の風習に触れられないのはいささか残念だがね。
Looking at the feet of her talking master, Hishia pondered. He had been walking for the past 7 years for the sake of his stay alone. What drove Shinu Narita was a hate and rage only known as vengeance. He had returned to his place of birth to take everything from the 4 traders who had taken everything from him. As the first step towards that, he infiltrated the Tenkawa Noble Academy, the fortress of his nemesis, as a student. He would live right under the enemy and begin his long-desired battle.
成田様、最後までお供します。
Hishia looked up at the pleasant night sky once more. The moon's strong orange color had faded, making it shine as beautifully as a golden plate.
最初の復讐劇が果たされてから1週間ほどが過ぎたでしょうか。多少の悶着はあったものの、成田様は無事にスクールの一員としての生活を続けておられます。学生ではないヒシアといえば、奥島市内で今日も豆々しく。
I looked up at the high ceiling and checked the state of the church hall, which remained dreary and dark even in the light of noon. This church was the place we use as a base of operations here in Ogushima. It was quite old, but unlike most churches in Japan, this one was built to last. It had taken quite a bit of time to secure a place like this. Our base had to be in Ogushima, be well hidden from Kurofune, have space for the various items we would store, and finally it had to suit Master Narita's taste. As a maid, I had to fulfill each and every single one of the criteria.
成田様は万事に派手好きな方ですし、ハードボイルドには境界がつきものなのです。ハドが好きな映画監督もそういうことを言ってたような気がします。
I spoke to the emptiness in the same tone I would speak to others. I had actually had a bit of a habit talking to myself like so, and it might have been something to develop due to the lonely days of my youth. It's like a shadow of my heart. Through all the hard work, I secured this more or less satisfactory property. For a hideout, it stood out quite a bit, but it let us conduct our operations without any problems. Master Narita seemed fond of it as well. It was quite sturdy as well, so it could also buy time in case we were in a worst-case scenario.
しかし成田様は無事に学生生活を営んでおられるでしょうか。
In all honesty, I was quite worried. After all, on the first day after coming here, he was greeted by Sako Tanashi, a pair of boobs he was very devoted to. Excuse me. It was well known by now that he was an absurd, oftentimes troublesome character who didn't read the mood. Thanks to him doing various things that would not be named here, Sako Tanashi ended up calling him a pervert, and that was very justified. Yeah. Anyways, I will now begin my next job. I didn't have to babysit my annoying master, but that didn't mean that I could walk around town and enjoy what it had to offer. As a good maid, I had been working hard to prepare for the second act, and that was more or less done. Master Narita's revenge tragedy, its second target was none other than...
そろそろ一休み入れましょうか。
All was going according to plan. We'd arranged the moment it was decided that Master Narita would go to the academy. While Master Narita was working towards his goal in the academy, I was busy with work that had to be done outside, and the revenge tragedy was going smoothly so far. With Takashi Hanazono leaving the stage, 3 targets were left. Master Narita would lead the next one by himself, and my job was to create a net to chase him into. In the faint, ever-dusty darkness of a certain room in the church, there was a laptop lighting up my surroundings with its pale light. I did some light editing on the message I had typed down and pressed the send button. Using the power of the internet, I was working towards taking the wealth of the second target, Shinzen Katsuragi, and completely cornering him.
すべて滞りなく。
Most of Master Narita's targets were people he knew. That might have been why the hatred born out of betrayal was so
メイ
deep.
ドとしては差し出がましい考えでしたね。気分転換に外出でもしましょうか。
He had sworn to go through with this, and it was my role as his maid to help him fulfill his desire. I turned off the laptop and closed it. I had to manage our funds, gather information, negotiate with business and financial institutions, clean up the hideout. Compared to my master, who was enjoying his youth in a prestige school, I had to do quite a lot. However, people weren't meant to be free and to enjoy this freedom. Those were Master Narita's own words, so I regularly made some time for myself. I didn't have any plans for the rest of the day, which was quite a rarity. It wasn't healthy to just sit in the semi-ruin and get lost in thought, so I would just aimlessly walk around and enjoy myself. It was a bit early, but a lunchtime event seemed quite attractive right now. I liked making food myself, but I also liked eating outside. If I came across something good, I could add to my own repertoire. A local had taught me that a place called Okushima Odori had some good chicken.
そうですね。今日の昼食はチキンがいいかも。
Man, chicken's always a good option. One of my favorite meats. The world was full of cooking that used chicken. Even the place I was raised in had these chicken kebabs. It was a dish that was basically just chicken meat on skewers, carelessly cooked over a flame. The smell of melting fat was very enticing, and it was quite a luxury for me back there. Rock salt worked to make it even more juicy. The church was a short way outside town, so there was no establishments nearby. If I wanted to eat out, I had to go closer to the center and in the Okushima station. As I casually walked towards the downtown, I became aware of just how wealthy this country was. This was only a rural area, yet it was more well-ordered than many of the lands Master Narita had visited in the past. The Japanese were said to be a people that, if in groups, could do something unpredictable, but they were quite skilled in the art of improving quality of life to raise it to the average level. Despite the time of day, I wanted something sweet, so I stopped by a convenience store, the essence of Japanese aspirations, and bought some cheesecake sticks I ate on my journey. Cheesecake sticks? What? Oh my gosh, what the heck, Japan? This is at a convenience store, mind you. This is at a konbini. And they have freaking cheesecake sticks. Gosh, America's so behind. I will say the only place in America that has something kind of decent in comparison to Japan, like something that is somewhat close, but not quite, is probably Hawaii. I've been to Hawaii, and like if you go to like a gas station store or whatever, like they actually do have some decent food there. You can find some good stuff. Like not everyone, but like if you ever go to like Minute Stop there, really good. I really recommend. They have like some katsu chicken stuff. It's so good. I'm getting a little distracted. A grand sweetness and a pleasant feeling of it melting in my mouth. Being mere sticks, they were easy to eat, and they were packaged to prevent the hands from getting dirty.
これほどのものが1ドル程度で売ってるとは。日本人、マジどういう神経してるのでしょうか。
Yeah, they're probably $1 each, and they're probably really freaking good, too. I looked up to see a blue sky with clouds gently floating through. The shine made me want to yawn, while the time made me want to take a nap. Just how precious was this piece? The Japanese built it up, enjoyed it, and preserved it without knowing its value at all. as such outsider-like thoughts went through my head.
おや、メイドさんではないですか。
Eru, I didn't think we'd get to see you. How's it going? I was approached by Miss Eru Takazaki. I didn't have many acquaintances here, but I knew this girl from her being a school friend of Master Narita's. She was the local who told me about the Grand Chicken. Yeah, I kind of figured when she mentioned Odori.
これは高崎様。このようなところでお会いするとは珍しいですね。
The last time we met, Master Narita helped her sneak out of the academy, so it was quite a strange situation. I'd heard that she was the youngest among those dwelling in the same dorm as Master Narita, but her compactness combined with her pretty face made her look even younger than she was. She was as lovable as a doll, though she certainly wasn't what Master Narita would prefer. By that, I meant a very specific part of the body. No, we got it, Hishia, believe me, we got it.
イシア、日本の学生は月曜日から金曜日の間、囚人のごとく監禁されて勉学に励むと伺っておりましたが、そうではないのですか?
It wasn't a day off, and even if it was, the academy was a cruel place that was highly strict about who could leave. You had to go out of your way to get a permission. Despite that, Miss Takazaki was walking around outside like so. What was this about?
今日の自分は講義を自主的に開けて外出許可を取り遠征に来たのです。なぜと問われれば自分は答えるでしょう。定めだと。
It's gonna be for like some game or something. Word Expedition told me all I needed to know. She had gone shopping back when Master Narita snuck out of the
で
academy.
は、本日もスクールでは手に入らないようなお宝をお買い求めに。
Alright, what is it? Is it a light novel? Is it a manga?
おさようです。お買い求めに来ました。今日はいろいろなものの発売日なので、趣味人たるもの発売日には自ら足を運ばねばなりません。
お見事な心情でございます、高崎様。
Yep, you were the most respectable weeb I know. I paid my respects to the show of will with a maid-like bow.
それでですね、全裸で寮の廊下を歩いてくるわ。おっぱいをもみしだくことにごくわずかな罪悪感もないわで。
Yeah, that sounds very accurate.
成田様は昔からそういうわがまま傲慢身勝手な方なのです。
She was like, yep, yep. I ended up accompanying her on her expedition. Why, you wonder? It just happened, nothing more. I had time today, so I didn't mind. Miss Takazaki was a local, which made her quite knowledgeable about the area, and I learned a lot from her. This was just another job I had as a maid. I had to gather information in order to be useful to Master Narita when he needed me.
メイドさんぐらいになると妖怪父もみーのケツをしばき回して言うこと聞かせたりできますか?
Boob demon?
Oh no, 無理です。お尻にショットガンをぶち込んでも、かの主は決して父に対する態度を改めることはないでしょ
超最悪です。
う。そうです。まあ割と最悪です。
I mean, Arrow kind of changed his mind in her route, I would say. Don't you think? Like, he got really excited about the prospect of, you know, a flat chest just being a chest that could bloom into something beautiful one day. Miss Takasaki wasn't very expressive, but that just made her more lovable, like a figure. I felt like we had something in common, and I had absolutely no trouble talking to her.
でもですね、成田みたいな尊大なタイプが誘い受けの方がいいんですよ。基本スタンスなのです。人によっては譲れないラインになりますが。
いえいえ、やはりヒシアは攻めだと思います。刹那の快楽の中であれ、成田様は自分の意志を他人に握られたがらないでしょうし。
Yeah, I definitely think he's a top kind of guy. Somehow during this expedition we began analyzing the mental workings of Master Narita. Some may wonder why this was happening, but I found it to be a most natural outcome. The concept of top and bottom was a very highly important concept in any literature. Japanese literature had origins in ancient martial arts, and in modern times, it has branched out in many branches and was still creating serious bloody conflict. For non-Japanese like myself, the nuances of the concept are hard to explain, but basically the top was in charge while the bottom was being dominated. It was like the serving right in volleyball and the like. That seemed most easy to understand. Though, just so you know, neither I nor Miss Takazaki were much into that sort of thing. It just happened that we ended up talking about it.
そこが甘いのです。成田のような一見偉そうに振る舞う意志の強そうな手合いこそ誘い受けがスタンダードと思うのです。ですね。
しんちゃん、僕は
Oh my gosh.
本当に強く求めてるから。
I don't know if you guys remember that moment where I like acted out them like, I don't know, getting a little like gay with each other, right? Because like they were kind of like making it seem that way. I didn't think it was actually like a thing. No, the game even does it too. They're really trying to go for it.
制服太陽、お前がこの成田真理を征服するだろう。
Oh my gosh, no.
やってみるがいい。さあ、早く来たまえ。
Game, why do you do this?
怖いのかね。
Why'd you have to say that last line? That was no. I don't want to hear that. No, don't make that face.
なんがば、おお、究極合体みたいな。
Oh my gosh. She didn't have a better person in mind, so she used Taigi Mikado, but I like that casting choice. Oh my gosh, Hishia's into it too. By the way, I met him by accident back when I first visited the academy. Miss Takazaki's oration made it quite easy to picture that happening. I even created a mental image that could run for at least half an hour, but that didn't mean I would just accept this. Oh my gosh, you guys are too much.
イシアはこうだと思うのです。
Oh my gosh, now she's picturing it.
太陽、君はもっと明敏な男だと思っていたがね。ん？それはどういうことかな。まさか、しんちゃん、君は、今さら気づいても遅いのだよ。この成田真理をじらした罰、その肉体で受けてもらおう。しんちゃん、こんなに硬いの。
Please don't. Please stop this. No, please don't make that sound. I want to be done with this.
ガバ、うおー、知行合一という。
やりますね、メイドさん。そちらのケースも非常に興味深いです。
なんと奥深い文化であることか。まだまだ思考実験の余地がありそうですね。
So that's what y'all are into, yaoi, huh? Suddenly, Miss Takazaki fell silent as though turned off. Perhaps this was an impertinent comparison.
どうかされましたか？
この場にミトリもいればよかったと思っていました。
Oh, don't bring her up yet. We're not to her route yet. I don't want to be sad about it. It wasn't rich in expression, but I felt like I could see a hint of sadness in her eyes. What a blunder on my part. Because of the flow of the conversation, I had no choice but to ask now.
その方はどうかなさったのですか？
少し前にスクールを辞めてしまいました。
余計なことを伺ってしまい。
いいえ、良いのです。
兜山みどり様がどうなったのか、本当は知っているのですよ。成田様から調べるように命じられましたから。本当はどうなってしまわれたのか、高崎様は悲しまれるかもしれません。知って嘆くのと知らずに笑うのと、どちらが幸せでしょう。もしかすると本当に似ているのかもしれない。でも成田様の正体が発覚するような言動は慎まねばなりません。真実は胸の中だけに、そ知らぬ顔で沈黙を通すことにいたしました。
Dang, that would be rough. Like hearing her talk about that, and then you can't say nothing. Miss Takazaki's passion and devotion to subculture was something grand. We began with a specialized store at an old town street, then went to take a look at a large bookstore and a DVD shop at a department store. After that, we headed to the station before continuing to the Hokai bookstore in a back alley shopping area. Our expedition involved strolling, window shopping, and the checking of the notable points in the town. By the time we were done walking around, it was far past lunchtime. In fact, it was nearly evening.
サブカルチャー、人間たるものカルチャーを敬わねばなりません。そして飽和するサブカルチャーはこの国が生んだアングラ文化の頂点の姿。
結局アングラなのですか？
サブカルチャーはサブだからこそ美しく育つのです。大輪のバラではない複雑厳妙なわびとさび、そう道端に咲くタンポポの輝き。メジャー化してしまえばその時には最も大切なカルチャー的魂が失われてしまう。メジャーはメジャーゆえに大衆性の束縛から逃れられないのですから。
Yeah, yes and no. I feel like anime, especially nowadays, has become this really big thing, even outside of Japan. I mean, obviously it's always been kind of a thing for a long time, but I feel like especially nowadays, it's like even people here in like the United States know like what Attack on Titan is, or like Naruto, or things like that, right? But I wouldn't say necessarily they're bound to the Western audience. I would say there's definitely a lot more Western influence nowadays. You got like people like Netflix and stuff getting into the business and making more anime, and they're more obviously of a Western company, right? But I don't know. I wouldn't say like every big thing that comes from anime that like is popular here is necessarily influenced by here. I think a lot of people like anime because it's not just about the United States. Like, it doesn't really cover many things over here. It's about things that we don't really know much about, so it's more interesting to us. Ms. Takazaki seemed to have some strong opinions about subculture. It seemed to be far more profound than I realized.
まあ、それはこっちに置いておいて。メイドさん、少し早いですが、晩ご飯にしませんか?
And it looks like the sun's going down from the color of the water.
高崎様。
I'd skipped lunch today, after all. I could go for 3 days without food, but every proper human should eat when they could. Thus, we ended up eating out. She was a local, so we went to a place she recommended. It was a Western restaurant called Kai Kai, excuse me. And it supposedly had a long history here. It was only a few minutes away, straight from the station. The building was snug and white and welcomed you with a refined-looking sign and a wooden door. It was more spacious than it appeared outside, and there was about 10 tables around. Apparently there were private rooms as well, but we merely sat at the table we were led to.
ディナーはコース料理までいろいろありますが、ここのおすすめはこれ。ビーフシチュー。ワインでよく煮込まれた肉の旨味、柔らかさ爆発のジュルジュルですよ。
ほうほう。なるほど。
I had traveled alongside Master Narita for a long time. I knew well by now that you always had to follow the local customs, thus order what Miss Takazaki recommended, as well as a pasta with chicken and tomato sauce. There was a saying, one in the trenches, keep your head down. In other words, fondling the breast of whoever you came across could get you arrested. I mean, I wouldn't directly relate those two together, but sure?
メイドさん、簡単に食べる方なのですか?
食べられるときに精一杯食べねばなりません。高崎様もどうぞ。もっと大きくなるために。
I love her just giving her advice on how to grow a bigger chest.
おお、そうです。自分もサクのような巨乳キャラとして君臨するために。
And she thinks of Saku's, of course. I mean, Saku does probably have the biggest, but I just think it's funny. He says something that would make a certain type of gentleman boo. Bigger didn't always mean better, so it was a needlessly complicated problem to women. Yeah, I would agree with that. I don't think bigger necessarily equates to better. I think, like, there is an optimal size. The food came in no time. The rich scent tickled my nose. Wine, tomato, onions, a collaboration between such standard ingredients and well-boiled meat. Every piece brought up the others.
おう、濃厚な味付けと舌の上で溶けて崩れる肉の煮込み具合。これはなかなか手間をかけた一品です。
そうでしょう、そうでしょう。さあ、 どんと味わうが良いのです。
I like this quite a lot, so much so that I would make this myself next time I had the chance. As I ate, I asked Miss Takazaki about what Master Narita had brought up, or has been up to. As his maid, I had to know whether he was doing something stupid. The answer to that is yes, he's always doing something stupid. I was more or less 100% certain he was.
昼間も少しお話ししましたが、スクールでの成田様はどのような感じですか？ご学友の方々に迷惑をかけておられないでしょうか？
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, most of the academy, I think, hates him.
めちゃくちゃ迷惑かけてます。ジョージです。
完膚なきまでに予想通りで、これっぽっちも驚きがありませんね。
Telling him not to trouble other people is like telling a bully from a movie not to become a good kid by the end.
迷惑をかけまくって悪びれずにセクハラしまくって、とにかくめちゃくちゃやってますが、サクもソラコもタマオもそれなりに慣れてはきたようですね。
成田様が慣れたのではなく、おとなし様たちが慣れてしまわれましたか？
豪雨と落雷で停電した時、外の天候に怒っても仕方ないですから。
天才扱いですか？
Narita's just a natural disaster. You just kind of have to accept it.
そんな感じです。雷を落とすのはサクの側ですけど。
Talking to Miss Takazaki was so fun that it made me forget the time. This might have been a first for me.
やはり似ている。どこか淡白で人間になりきれていない部分であるとか、自分の心をまだうまく表現できないところとか、そして問答無用で理屈も何も一切無視してとっくに生き方を決めていそうなところとか、かつての自分とも今の自分とも重なる部分があるから。
Sorry, I'm very distracted. My cat's like sleeping on my bed, and she's making this weird sound in her sleep. She's going like... It's just really cute.
だからこんなに楽しんでしまうのかもしれない。
ソラコに至っては生乳もみもみには勝てなかったよ。なのです。やっぱり金髪巨乳は淫乱と相場が決まっていますね。
Probably in visual novels, yeah.
おお、それはそれは。
Yeah, she definitely gave in to him pretty quick. While Miss Takazaki shrugged with no expression on her face, I became aware of a certain problem. Soroko Katsuragi was the blood-related daughter of the second target, Shinzen Katsuragi. Master Narita knew her personally. He didn't talk about her much, but I could imagine that they were close. Should Master Narita really kill the second target? I suppose that it was pointless to ponder at this point. He would definitely go through with this. That thought made me realize just how much I became able to think. Well done, me. Like how she just gives herself a high five.
成田様は頑固というか、わがままというか、なんと言いますか、ヒシアとしてはもう少し柔らかくなっていただきたいのですが、なかなかままならないものですね。
ほう。
The whisper made Miss Takazaki stop eating and open her eyes wide. That might have been the first expression I saw on
メ
her.
イドさんはなんだかんだと言って成田のことを信頼してるのですね。
そうですね。長い付き合いですので。
でもあの成田を信頼とかマジ正気を疑います。
はい、自分でもマジそう思います。
I was completely serious about that.
食事の後、高崎様をバス停までお見送りしてお別れしました。今夜は思いがけず楽しいひとときを得ました。成田様もスクールでの生活で、それが束の間のものであれ、このようなささやかな幸福を享受できていればと、ヒシアは願います。約束された次の舞台の幕開けはもう間近。成田様にひとときの安らぎがあらんことを。 忠実なる次女は今日も夜なべで働きます。と言っても今は昼ですが、
Never stops
シ
working.
ンガポールに1件、アメリカに2件、金融関係の折衝を終えます。第2幕では葛城を破滅させるため非合法かつ大掛かりに資金を運用しなければならないので大忙しです。成田様はあの通りの方ですから、折衝はヒシアがやってしまった方がおおむね手間がかかりません。どうしても厄介な事案では成田様が力を使われます。際どい商談も危険な裏取引も一撃必殺。ご主人様は目的のために手段を選びません。葛城新山を追い詰める下準備はほぼ完璧に整いました。あとは成田様のゴーサインを待つばかり。そろそろ一休み入れましょうか。
Yeah, Hishia, you've freaking done a lot. Think you deserve some rest. If Master Narita was around, I'd be giving him coffee now. Bitter coffee was the man's choice, he would insist, and he had yet to understand the grand taste of black tea. How saddening. I was by myself, so it was obvious what I would make now, though instead of black I would go for Japanese-style tea, specifically the locally famous Okushima coarse tea.
ジャパニーズティーの美味しい入れ方はまだまだ研究が足りてませんね。
Seated in a church hall, I drank Japanese tea from a mug. By my standards, that was quite a luxury. The bitterness of the hot tea stimulated my tongue and activated my brain. As I took a breather and relaxed, I somehow remembered the night he completed his first act of revenge.
遠い銃声、約束の銃を握った成田様の手、それを見て胸に手をやる自分。なぜかこうして何度も思い出している。成田様が初めてヒシアの手を取られた時のことを思い出しました。それはヒシアの旅の始まり。
Ooh, is she gonna go into the backstory?
もう何年も前のこと。
Yes, I'm dying to see it, visualized how they met. He's kind of briefly touched on it. It was high noon. The intense heat and the lack of wind combined to make the destination shiver in the haze. It was a road surrounded by poor homes made of sun-dried bricks. The body of a man clad in gorgeous clothing began to collapse. I subconsciously ran to support him. I was too slow, however. The man's body crashed against the white wall of a nearby house and left a trail of red on it as he collapsed on the floor. By now I knew that there'd been a light, dry sound of a gun firing, but I didn't realize it back then. I was extremely shocked. After all, I couldn't protect my owner. I asked myself why I had to protect him, but I didn't find a single answer. All I knew was that my owner had been shot. Along with that came the realization that I couldn't fulfill my promise anymore. There was a gun at my side. I had been bought and raised as a weapon, so the gun was like an extra limb to me. There was no need to think. The gun was already in my hand. The first bullet was already loaded. Safety was off. My owner was now showing the whites of his eyes and bleeding through his mouth as he became a corpse, but the attacker was still behind him. The order given to me was to kill the enemies and protect my master. Even if I couldn't protect him, there was still the former. I had to kill the enemy. But then for some reason I glitched. What was my reason for doing this? I didn't know. Was it because there was poor people here who had emotionally watched the death of this flashy man? Was I broken by failing to fulfill my first directive? Or maybe there was no emotional reason for this and the sunlight was too strong. Unlike me, my sisters didn't hesitate in acting to fulfill the orders given to them. I, however, let go of the weapon I held and looked at something that was shining next to my feet. It was something that had hit the dry sand road. A bullet. It had pierced my now late master and scratched the wall a bit. The tip was slightly misshapen, but the overall shape hadn't changed. I used my sleeve to pick up the still hot bullet as well as the empty case nearby. I didn't really know why I did that. There was barely any blood on it and the smooth surface was pleasant for the eyes. The surroundings became loud, angry bellows, gunfire, countless screams. None of it mattered to me. I was completely fixated on the bullet tip. How much time had passed? Suddenly, there was a shadow over me. I looked up and saw a young man. His facial structure and skin made it clear that he was Asian. Lots of different blood was mixed among the people living here. Some people among them had Asiatic features, so I could notice them well. What stood out about him was his harsh and cold eyes and the fact that he had an aged and rough handgun in hand. It wasn't rare for children to have guns here. Exposed to blaze-like hostility, I reflexively moved. I once again took the gun I'd let go and aimed it at him. He extended one of his hands to me. It was the one without a gun or anything at all. I looked again and noticed that he had many scars on him. Some were old, some were fresh, some taken just moments ago. Gunfire was approaching us. The young man might have broken through my sisters. That might have been why he was so wounded, but there was no way he could have survived. Not even the Reaper could escape from my sisters. Bleeding all over, the young man had extended his hand towards me. I responded by taking his hand, and the moment I did so, he began pulling me and running. I heard loud bellows and gunfire behind me. Some bullets went right above or next to me. The boy was shooting back again and again and again.
かしこまりました。
I ran as ordered. I might have been following him solely out of reflex due to the strong tone of his voice. The poor people around watched with confused eyes as a foreign boy and girl ran, leaving behind a bloody corpse. Gunfire, sparks, bellows, hot wind and sand. I heard the sister I was closest to shout something, but I didn't remember what. The young man ran and I merely followed. Our hands were still joined. We managed to loose them for the time being. This wouldn't last, though. The sisters would soon find us. They had to avenge their master, after all. As I took a breather, the young man looked right at me. I didn't have the mind necessary to wonder why. However, the very next moment... Of course. Why did I think anything differently? He fondled me, not holding back. It was an eagle grip, and he topped it off by burying his head between my breasts. He was a full, complete, ultimate pervert, but if I wasn't but a weapon, I would have shouted something like that. This young man was Master Narita in his youth, and this was before he went by Shinri Narita. By the way, I had quite an alluring body even back then. In all honesty, breasts were unnecessary for battle. They were heavy, got in the way, made my back hurt, and increased the surface area I could be hurt on. However, my old master was a man of unique tastes. Just like there were those who liked the functional beauty of the AK series, as well as those who preferred the unnatural insect-like beauty of the Blazer R92, he was a man who had preferences for me and my sisters. To him, women weren't meant to be enjoyed, just like the freaks who were crazy about movies or bisque dolls. He found value in feminine beauty itself. Honestly, he was pretty messed up. Because of this, even though he had made time to appreciate my aesthetic value, I had absolutely no experience of being touched. However, my inexperienced breast dominated like that made me let out a sound. As he buried his face to my breast, the young man, Master Narita, was shaking. The softness he so desired must have moved him. Good to know he's always been like this. Just always been a pervert. After some time, he looked up and said that with the most serious face. This had to be the first time I ever thought, what is he even saying? Seemingly satisfied, the young Master Narita took my hand again and resumed running. He's like, wait a minute, hold up, I need a moment. Just buries his face in her. Of course, that would be his way of recuperating quickly. After a few days of such travel, we finally arrived at an abandoned building that seemed to be his hideout. The reason why it was easier to escape the chasers than expected had to be the mess left behind by Master dying. With such a pillar of power gone, it was only obvious that the second and third in command would fight over his position. History spoke of many such cases all over the world. Though it took us a while to realize that we had few chasers, back then we did nothing but run for hours on end. Young Master Narita was clearly younger than me, but he acted extremely self-important in both ways of speaking and mannerisms. He was old enough for his voice to have already changed, which made him seem more adult than he appeared. Though that wasn't something I could care about. I went and did as told. I was used to obeying. As told, I doused myself in water. Washing off the few days' worth of sand and blood was so pleasant and surprised me. As ordered, I washed myself as thoroughly as I could. This was something I learned later, but apparently washing your hands not only made them clean, but it also helped wash off the doubts about the past and justify what you were doing right now. Once I was squeaky clean, he presented me a set of clothes.
身につけたまえ。
Another thing of note here was that he didn't do something as modest as waiting in another room. He had been watching me wash myself, mostly focusing on my chest area.
かしこまりました。
As ordered, I took the clothes. I didn't have the capacity for embarrassment, so I couldn't care that someone was staring at me. The apparel provided to me were England-style maid clothes. It was quite a mystery how this boob lover acquired this in such an area, but I didn't even want to know the answer to that.
これは
メイド服というものだよ。
I knew that much. There were many servants wearing such clothing in my ex-master's
ど
mansion.
うしてメイド服なのですか？
I did as told until now, but the maid uniform forced a question out of me. I had nothing against wearing a servant's uniform, but we were being chased right now. It seemed like we had shaken them off by now, but it wasn't unlikely that we would be taken by surprise from behind, and these uniforms stood out far too much. That was the reasoning I gave
ふ
him.
む。他人の言葉にいいダクダクと従うのみではなく、疑問を抱く意思はあるのか。
Young Master Narita gave me an exaggerated nod.
何？ちょうどその服しか用意がなかっただけだと思う。
That was his answer. Young Master Narita was the only person here. That meant that he had either had it handy or kept it hidden somewhere. He had this maid uniform female clothing. Skirts weren't exactly uncommon in this area. You could also see pants with lots of cloth, so it might have been for an emergency use. Otherwise, it might have been a type of treasure, I guess. I could wear it without problem since he told me it was good to ask questions. I gave him another
ど
one.
うしてメイド服を持っているのですか？
君はなかなかに有能なようだ。名前は？
ヒシア。
I said that after thinking a bit. That was the name I'd been given before I'd been bought. I felt like another one, I'd also used another one given to me by my now late master, but I didn't feel like using it. The memories of the place I was born in are weathered. I wasn't there for long, and that was what was left after And what was left had been thoroughly shaved off by the days in the burning wasteland. You ever do that when you're reading? Like, you just keep getting it wrong, and you're like, okay, we're just gonna start back at the beginning, reread it. Some of the dialogue in this game makes me do that. The only thing that was left was the name that someone had used on me. I didn't know the meaning of Hishia. For all I knew, it might have been the name given to me by my real parents.
ヒシアか。
The young man ignored my question and folded his arms before nodding and beginning to talk in a grandiose manner.
ヒシという植物は俗名をトラパといい、これは地面に撒くことで外敵の侵入を阻むカルトロップスという武器を語源に持つ。花言葉は秘めた思い。続くあの字は己を意味する文字だが、元より名前とは己を指すものであるので、これはまあ音韻のために付け足された補助の一字というところだろう。
Okay, well, aren't you pretty well versed in plants?
つまり、ヒシア、君は何者かの守りの武器としての生活を送りつつ、胸の奥には、そう、その豊かな胸の奥には、何らかの熱い思いを秘めていたのだよ。
By the way, this was all said in English. This area saw the use of Hindu, Punjabi, Urdu, and other languages, but the official language was English. Despite that, upon merely knowing how my name was pronounced, he applied Japanese kanji to it, which was very Master Narita-like.
何？熱い思いなど思い当たらないというのかね。得てして本当に強い思いとは自身ではなかなか自覚できぬものだよ。だがそれを意識することができれば非常に強い力となって君を。
I meekly listened as he eloquently spoke for a good amount of time, but then I became annoyed and cut him off.
それでなぜ持ってるのですか？
私を育てた人間のクズからメイドというものは非常に素晴らしいと聞かされていた。いざという時のために衣装だけ入手しておいたのだよ。
いざという時って意味がわかりません。
今まさに役に立っただろう。
Interesting. So he's been saving this British-style maid uniform for a very long time, and it just somehow exactly fits her. It was hard to agree with him, but I lacked the subtleties to say anything about
似合
it.
っているよ。
His sudden comment didn't make my heart skip a beat or anything like that. However, even now, I could remember the honest childlike smile he gave me back then.
それが成田様に初めて会った時の思い出です。
As I enjoyed the Japanese tea, I found myself looking back at the past. A giggle escaped my mouth. For something that started in such a shocking manner, it certainly ended on a comical note. Also, though he strongly implied that the man who trained Master Narita was dead, he was actually alive. He was quite old when I got to meet him, but he was definitely enough of a character for even Master Narita to call him a scumbag. It made me understand why Master Narita grew up to be so problematic.
改めて自問しますと、ルシア、どうして成田様に今も付き従っているのか、よくわかりませんね。
Master Narita freed me from the role of weapon, but he never once said that I had to obey and serve him. What I was doing now was all based on my own will. With a clear and cool head, I can now easily see that Shinu Narita was far from a proper person.
尊大でわがままで空気が読めず、しばしば何を考えているかわからない行動をしでかし、異常なおっぱい狂。
Yeah, I would say that's a very good description of Narita sometimes. I mean, he has some moods, you know, where he's a little bit better of a person. Definitely has some moments, but I think just generally that's a good description. He was a weirdo, to put it mildly. Mildly. At the same time, there was a dark will boiling within him that no one was allowed to know about.
ますます危険人物ではないですか。
Why was I serving such an ultra madman? Most actions based on human will had some sort of reason to them, but that part of my heart where the reason should be was like an empty void. Perhaps that was the very reason why.
他の生き方が何一つ思いつかなかった。武器として育ち、主を失いましたが、結局新たな持ち主を選んだ。うつろな未来しか思い描けなかったので、未来へと続く時間軸の上に道を作るため、イシアは成田様に従った。それはもう何年も前。こことは違う熱風と砂塵の渦巻く土地でのことです。
Well, that was kind of nice. We finally got to hear about kind of how they met.
成田真理はなすべきをなす。名を変え身分を偽りスクールの一員に加わりながら学友たちを欺き復讐という矜持を企てている。成田真理がなすべき第一幕は終わった。次なるは第二幕。撃つべきは桂木新山。かつて帝家の金庫番でありながら黒船と語らって一族を皆殺した裏切り者。そして幼なじみでもある桂木空子の実の父親でもある。だからどうしたというのだ。人間なる者の情も尊ぶべき諸々も捨て去った。憎悪に狂ったこの手にためらいはない。
Below, I saw the grand and beautiful Katsuragi mansion. Shinsen had improved the defenses of his castle and locked himself inside like a turtle in the shell. I was currently doing the final preparations for the second act's climax that would come tomorrow. The forest I was hiding in on a hill near the mansion, so I could see its structure just by looking down. I reunited with Soriko after 7 years away, but that wasn't a bond that could hold me. I would wield this hatred and take my enemy's life. Before I'd even begun this revenge tragedy, there was one moment when I let my rage and hatred take over. It was back when I was still inexperienced. I met her. I couldn't tolerate a certain man's plundering, so I took a gun in hand out of selfish anger. And the result of that was...
成田様、どうかされましたか？いきなり黙ってしまわれて。ぶっちゃけ 気持ちが悪くて背中ゾクゾクです。
Ishia's silent words from behind brought me back to what had to be done.
屋敷を細部まで記憶していたのだよ。
My loyal and capable maid acquired the blueprint of the mansion and the records of its security system. This would be the last inspection we did before the act. All I had to do was account for any differences between the blueprint and the real thing, and then wait for the time to
今日
come.
はあくまでも下見。万一発見された場合、正体の露見を防ぐことを第一に、光線を避けて迅速に撤退する。
はい、ヒシア。
Though only someone extremely skilled could spot us while we were hiding, I doubt that Shinzen had people like that. Shinzen Katsuragi. Putting aside how he was as a person, I could tell that he had certain talents just by looking at his mansion. The building that mixes classical Japanese construction with modern architecture was designed by Shinzen himself. The garden was luxurious and vast, and the walls on one side were built to not outclass the view outside. The site was truly elegant. It was an example of the fact that personality and talent were separate things.
情報通り、かなりの防備を固めてますね。
いつもながら君の耳は確かだな。
Those with an attentive eye could see that there was strong bloodlust in this security. It wasn't mere alertness, but the thorniness of a man clinging to life.
その筋の方から丁重に聞き出したマル秘情報によると、ここ数日でいきなりだそうです。
He'd used the power of money to install as many security devices and hire as many guards as a hedgehog had spines. The place was now as brutish as a fortress, making it lose its elegance. The guards were low quality too. They must have been Yakuza and gang members he bought using his wealth and connections.
この程度問題にならない。せいぜいあがけ、新山。貴様の無様を復讐の祭壇へ捧げる花としよう。
桂木新山が守りを固めた理由、気にかかりますね。花園が姿を消したので、次は自分の番だと思ったとか。
そこまで察しのいい男ではなかった。
Also, I'd approached him using my identity as Shinri Narita to drag him out into this revenge tragedy. It didn't look like he was wary of me at all.
不可解な点はあるが、こちらの動きが読まれたわけでないのだ。計画通りにことを進めるまでだ。
ヒシア的にあの屋敷から感じるのは怯えです。めっちゃ後ろ暗いことでもあるのでしょうか。
罪の意識だとでも。まさかだ。奴にそんな殊勝な干渉があるなら、とうに自らの心臓を切り裂いているだろう。財を築くために数えきれない数の人間を破滅させてきた。今になって怨恨の生産が降りかかるのを恐れているだけだ。鏡に映った影に怯えるように。もはやあの男に穏やかな夜はない。その最後にとびきりの悪夢で終止符を打とう。
Though even if he showed regret, I would still have my revenge. The sin had already been committed, after all.
成田様、明日の段取りは？ヒシアは家でポテチでもかじりながらほげーっとしてれば OK でしょうか？
Probably not.
桂木新山が守りを固めるのであれば、城ごと滅ぼし、奴の希望を根こそぎにする。
では、成田様が突入する際の援護を。ちなみにヒシア、マウスを汚さないようにポテチは割り箸でいただく主義です。
That's pretty smart.
やはり君は行き届いているな。
I continued watching the mansion, and at some point Katsuragi and what seemed to be his wife appeared from the edge. They were watching the elegant garden with unrefined smiles, making it quite clear that they were talking about money. For someone who turned his mansion into a hedgehog, he was far too defenseless. Merely taking his life was far too easy. I could end their lives with a single rifle right now. However, I wouldn't give them such a happy end. I would take all that they had and make them know the gravity of their sins. That was how revenge was supposed to be done. To Shinri Narita, only that could be a proper conclusion to the tragedy that had happened 7 years ago. If the second act turned out to be a failure, Kurofune would find out about my existence. That would be the beginning of a truly harsh battle. I had the resolve to throw away my life. For all I cared, it could fall into the flames of revenge and burn along with everything else.
それでよい。
屋敷の周囲しか警戒してないようですし、もう少し近づいて調べてみますか？
The girl who'd served me like she always did had become a lot more human-like over the past few years.
彼女何かをしてやれただろうか。
It was difficult to save anyone in the truest sense, even if you dedicated your entire life to it. All that Shinru Narita did was set her free, and yet...
ヒシアは自ら同行することを誓った。
She did it despite having no reason to come with me on this foolish journey with no happy ending. If this was her thanks for freeing her, it was certainly off the mark. I didn't even have the words to express how much her presence had saved me over the years. Hishia also had the resolve. She knew full well that the wasteland of vengeance couldn't be crossed by two people at once. She knew that she could become a bloody corpse at the side and found it agreeable. But I didn't want such an ending. If I burned up, it would be the result of walking the path I'd chosen for myself, and if the Lord above gave me retribution for this, I would welcome it. However, Hishia was...
成田様、
I cut my thoughts short and came back to my senses.
何やら上の空でマジ体調でも悪いのですか？さては今朝、おとなし様のを揉み損ねて深刻なオッパイン B1 不足なのですか？
Ah, yes. Boobamin B1. I know that
変質
vitamin.
者扱いはやめたまえ。進行に時と場所は選ばないが、放満がなくても3日は持つのだよ。
So, Narita can last 3 days without breast, and frickin' Hishia could last 3 days without food.
完璧に間違いなく。
As my loyal maid gave me a judging glare, I focused on the mansion again.
確かに、もう少し距離を詰めても。
Suddenly, I felt something akin to bloodlust on my neck. There was a shock going through my body, and as though as I took a bite of sand, this feeling told me something bad would happen if we came closer. It only took a moment for me to decide whether we really should continue or back down.
ここまでで十分だ。
まあ確かにあの屋敷を落とすだけならここから見ているだけで十分ですね。
Hishia shrugged with her usual somewhat bored
一
expression.
旦戻るとしよう。決着は明日だ。
はい、成田様。
The strange premonition might have just been an illusion. The real reason why I decided to be cautious is most likely because I prioritized Hishia. There's no need to start a fire here at this moment. We left the place from which we could overlook the Katsuragi mansion and walked through the untamed forest to a roadside. We tried to be as careful as possible, but thankfully it wasn't necessary. I would sneak out of the academy, come back here tomorrow night, and settle the score of Shinzen Katsuragi. Everything was going according to plan. Likely due to my increased alertness, I noticed that Hishia was oftentimes touching the area below her neck, probably subconsciously. I knew well what was below the maid clothing. The 2 bountiful breasts were a given, but there was also the bullet from that time. Oh yeah, I think we did talk to her about that at some point. Interesting. That was like somewhere in the common route, I believe. So now we know like kind of the backstory behind that bullet. When I first met Hishia, I let my anger take over and fired that exact bullet at the man who'd owned her as a weapon. When I'd grabbed her hand and began running for some reason, Hishia picked up the bullet and the casing. She put the 2 together and now wore them as a necklace or charm.
まだそれを持っているのかね。
ああ、はい。石や、いつも肌身離さず身につけております。
She responded with a faint smile, a rarity for her.
弦を担げる類の由来でもないだろうに。
まったく、なんという無粋なことを。少女漫画の主人公並みにロマンチストのくせに、他人の乙女ハートを理解しやがらないご主人様です。
いや、しかし。
これについては、成田様はどうぞ気になさらないでください。
I would imagine like the bullet kind of connects her to like being freed, I guess, from her previous master. I mean, obviously like Narita's not like the greatest master in the world, like he is kind of into himself a lot and probably makes her do a lot of crazy stuff, but I do think he like respects Hishia a lot.
私にとって唯一無二な次女のことだ。
ではコレクターズアイテムということに。
成田心理コレクショングッズかね。それは悪くない趣味だが。
いえ、イシアの歴史シリーズグッズです。
微妙に釈然としないものがあるが、まあいいだろう。
しかしまあ、どうしても売っちゃってしまえというのが成田様のご命令であるなら、忠実な次女としてはおとなしく従うのもやぶさかではありません。
それはないが。
Hishia often told me that I was stubborn and obstinate, but in my mind, she had me beat in that regard. If this was something she herself wanted, I had no right to bend it. Though I had one thing to say.
以前にも言って聞かせたが。
はい、なんでございましょう。
I stopped and turned to look at her, and she responded by looking right back. We stood in the shadows of the roadside trees, bearing different emotions in our eyes. My eyes likely showed a glimpse of an old, bitter memory, while her eyes showed nothing but peace.
君は私に借りなどない。そのことは忘れないでくれ。
いえいえ、そこら辺も含めて手前のことですから。主人の手を煩わせることなく、ヒシア、勝手にいたします。
She avoided arguing with me, leaving me no choice but to give up. This is how it always went whenever we talked about memories. However, even if she didn't have any regrets, I did, which was a rarity for me. It was something that I couldn't change now that it had been done.
君は本当に強情だな。
成田様に言えたことではありませんね。
Y'all are both stubborn, how about that? I gave up inside while she merely smiled. Then she came close and passed me, making us stand back to back, lightly lying on one another. I was the type to become alert when someone came behind me, but Hishia was a special case. It was a weekday noon, and we were standing here like this next to a mountain road that rarely had cars pass. Anyone looking at us would find us strange. I could feel her warmth on my back, which was the same as it ever was. However, Shinya Narita was no longer just a boy who was burning with a rage at an unfair world.
君は自分で思っているよりも多くのものを。
The silence continued for a good while, and our backs exchanged a lot of words. Next thing I knew,
何もかも終わった後はどうするつもりかね。
I asked her that.
お仕事終了後ですか？そうですね。
It wasn't likely that I would be in a good state once it was all over. Even if I survived, I probably wouldn't be blessed with a good future. Once that day came, I wanted her to forget this man and focus on her own bliss and live free. She put her hand on her chin and tilted her head in thought before
わ
answering.
がまま勝手で世間知らずの主人を捨ておくと、のたれ死にでもしそうなので、ヒシアが最後まで面倒を見ることにしましょう。
She was stubborn indeed. Hishia was obviously aware of what I was implying. She acted like she was trying to think of an answer, but this was merely an act. She knew the answer right away. There were paths with more bliss she could take. However, there was also a part of me that was relieved to hear. It was as though a spark had appeared in an empty post-revenge future I couldn't even picture. And I knew full well how sinful it was for me to think that.
君は完璧なメイドだな。
It was a path she'd chosen for herself, so what could I say against it? No matter how foolish it seemed to others, you could only find a life of no regrets on the path you chose for yourself. That was exactly why Shinri Narita would do, and what he had to. I would have my revenge.
もちろんでございます。
Still back to back, we exchanged a faint smile, then we resumed walking as though nothing happened. Tomorrow was the day I would have my revenge against Katsuragi. We had to return and thoroughly do the final preparations. After all, there would be no peace in this heart, burning with rage until the 4 targets were dead.
成田様を車で市内まで送り、バスに乗り込まれるのを見送った後、港へ出て取引を一つ済ませてしまいます。正規の空輸でも船荷でもありません。公式の記録には残されない類の、いわゆるヤバい品。思ったよりもスクールが手強そうなので、急遽手配していた品のいくつかがようやく届きました。サイズの違う木箱を3つ。中身はおがくずとサバの缶詰。二重底の中身については乙女の秘密。 軽く品質チェック。クーリングオフは効かない品が多いですので、お支払いはお口ファスナー込みで相場よりお高めに。こちらは戸様、乗客として振る舞うのが大事です。ヒシアもたまに見るノワールな映画では、決まって人気のない深夜の取引が行われますが、意外と白昼堂々荷物を移す方が発覚しないものであったりなかったり。滞りなく受け取ったので、アジトへ戻りました。
After I brought the items to the church and did the necessary adjustments, the time of day was rather awkward. It was too early for dinner, so I thought of having a late lunch and began wandering around the city to refresh myself in preparation for tomorrow. According to what my good-for-nothing master said, he was the only male étoile in the academy, making him get the VIP treatment. Apparently he was eating like a king every day, so I had lots of good food to keep up with him. Though it wouldn't be a competition or anything, I just felt like it. Though I had already checked all the places that Miss Takazaki had recommended to me as a local.
となると、ここは己で新規開拓するほかないでしょう。ないですね。はい。店を探すところもまた、食事の楽しみの一部分ですし。
Speaking to myself, I casually walked into the Furomachi River flowing not far from the Okushima station. The riverside here had a park, an outdoor stage, and a boardwalk, making it feel quite grandiose. It is a really nice looking area. The eastern side had many establishments lined up, and I explored some of them. One was Italian, one was an Okushima ramen place. I looked left and right comparing the menus and appearances of various places here. I'd heard of a popular comic that had become a TV series. It was about an average man eating by himself in an average establishment. Naturally, it was Miss Takazaki who told me about it. We talked quite a lot when eating together. As I wandered around while thinking such things, I ran into a familiar face. Of course, it wasn't Miss Takazaki. This one was blonde and had pretty big blue eyes. Besides that, she had large breasts that Master Narita would love, yet wore men's clothing, which made her quite strange. Her name was Soriko Katsuragi. Yeah, that's Soriko.
と言っても、実際に目にするのは初めてですが。
Due to her being a key person, I'd seen a photo of her. She was the daughter of the next target, Shinzen Katsuragi. Besides that, she was also Master Narita's childhood friend, an acquaintance from before the time he burned with hate.
こうしてみると、いかにも成田様の好みに合致しそうな方ですね。
Big boobs and a blonde. Based on her usual behavior, most would assume that he only cared if the boobs were big, but that wasn't the case. Master Narita liked boobs, but he wasn't a lustful man. He also made a point to be approachable, was highly unabashed, and had an airhead side to him, so there were many women who were attracted to him. He normally acted like he didn't care about them at all, only to go and be by their side when they wanted it, or present them with an open and straightforward self. Basically, he was amazing. Despite being a perv, he didn't know his place. Would it be weird to believe that he had some sort of weird superpower that made him release pheromones? He also had a preference for women with a strong heart. Breast size was of importance too, and blonde hair also added a good amount of points.
ご主人様の思考は、あの方の影響もあるのかもしれませんね。
I mean, I wouldn't say that Soriko has a strong personality, though. Japanese folk wisdom did say something about a blonde dragon living to 100, though it was unlikely that Miss Katsuragi, little Lady Soriko, had large breasts back then, so he must have developed his love of breasts from something else.
さて、どうしたものか。
That wasn't even a question. Miss Soriko didn't even know my face, so it was best to act like I didn't know her and just pass by her. But that didn't go well.
大丈夫ですから、本当に。
固いこと言うなよ、姉ちゃん。
いいだろう、お茶ぐらいしようぜ。
She was approached by two boorish-looking men. They were a breed of people who you wouldn't expect to see in a rural town like Okushima. Were they perhaps the types of baddies who piled up shame while traveling? These men were acting friendly and trying to lead her to an empty back alley. This wasn't looking good. She was the daughter of my master's target. Knowing what would be happening soon, it wasn't wise to approach her and increase the amount of uncertain
など
factors.
と、できた次女は悩んだりいたしません。
The Narita household had a rule to help maidens in need. By following it, he had attracted a lot of trouble and breasts to fondle. He's truly the worst. Yeah, that just sounds like something Narita would do. Just help out a girl just so he could fondle their breast. The most notable recent event involved the daughter of a prince of the British Empire, but I will leave that aside for now.
そこの学生様、私は通りすがりのメイドさんですが。
Knowing that it would be dishonorable as a maid of the Narita household to abandon her, I dashed to the back alley they vanished into.
たく、全くお話にならないよ、お前たち。
Lady Soraka threw back her blonde hair in a flashy manner. She had glasses on and there was two people lying next to her
これ
feet.
は全く予想外の展開。ナンパすんならせめてもう少しは頑張れよ。暇つぶしにもなりゃしね。
Miss Soraka sighed and shrugged at the men she just downed in just a few seconds, then turned to leave. It was like, some, another group of guys trying to pick up on me. Just another day. The led to us facing one another. Seeing me made her make a strange face. I hadn't met her, so it was unlikely that she could know that I was Master Narita's maid, but that was something already known to Lecturer Yomase as well as Miss Otanashi, so it wouldn't be a big issue. The problem was that she was an Etoile tier HMI and thus could have abnormal eyes.
あとは任せた。
I become worried that something bad could happen now, but then she put her glasses away as though she lost interest. Perhaps it was better to just turn back? My attentiveness sometimes worked as a curse. This time it made me realize that Miss Soraka didn't look so well. After she removed her glasses, she became pale and began walking in an unsteady manner. I had no choice here. Following the data in my brain, I accompanied Miss Soraka to a bench in a nearby park.
私は通りすがりのメイドさんです。何やら体調が悪そうですが、大丈夫でしょうか。はい。ちょっと気分が悪くなっちゃって。ありがとうございます。大丈夫なので。
Merely speaking made her out of breath.
無理はいけませんよ。少し休みましょう。どうもありがとうございます。
Soraka lightly bowed her head and thanked me over and over. I chose to stay with her until she calmed down and sat next to her.
そうですか。ヒシアさんは本物のメイドさんなんですね。スクールの外でメイドさんを見るなんて思いませんでした。絶滅危惧種メイド目、英国メイド赤に属するメイドです。確かに珍しいですが、意外と大きな石をどけたりすると見つかるものですよ。
Wait, you can find maids under boulders? What the heck? I'm gonna go look outside right now. We introduced ourselves, but I made sure to hide the fact that I was Master Narita's maid.
なんだか珍しい虫みたいですね。スクールというのは、桂木様が通学なされている学園ですか。メイドがいるとは一風変わっておられますね。
Yeah, it would be kind of weird to go to a school that has maids. Like, what other kind of fancy things do you got there?
様なんてよしてください。助けてもらったのは僕だし。では、ザ・ツラピエンコマンさんとでも呼びましょうか。
Sora Pienko? What?
様でいいです。
I used my wit to shorten the distance between us and perhaps make her feel at least a little bit better. If the body wasn't well, Master Narita would always emphasize the health of the mind.
というわけで、本当にご主人様はとんでもない変態なので、年がら年中おっぱいのことを考えているのです。監視していないとすぐに豚箱行きですよ。
I thought she wasn't trying to reveal Narita. That, like, pretty much is describing him.
その人、僕が知ってる人になんだかすごく似てる気がします。
Yeah, she made the connection. Many would realize that they were one and the same, but she seemed to be quite the natural airhead. The quality was charming on beautiful girls, but very vexing on filthy men, which was a good example of how unpleasant society could be. Miss Soraka was quite unlike the girl she was when she instantly downed two men in the back alleyway. She had these distant, cold eyes, but now she was like spring sunshine, which I found quite odd.
空子様の学園にもおられるのですか。メイドあるところ、演出者ありですね。うん、そうなのかも。
She was honest, soft, and didn't seem to harbor any ill will. However, tomorrow Master Narita would take her father away from her forever. Based on preliminary investigations, Miss Soroko and her father Shinzen were on complicated terms. It was hard to call them a proper father and daughter. There was a chance that they felt for each other more than what you'd expect from parent and child. That was a poor excuse. The ones who were trampling over the present for the sake of their past were Master Narita and me. I wouldn't hesitate to bring down the blade or pull the trigger, but perhaps I did feel a bit of guilt. Perhaps that was the reason why I'd called to her despite being fully aware that it was unnecessary. Even now, the mind and the heart were things I found difficult to control.
顔色はいくらか良くなられたようですね。
ありがとうございます。僕、人混みに弱くて、街に出ると気分が悪くなってしまうことが多いんです。
それなのに、どうしてこんなところへ？
It was quite bold to call anything you had here in rural Okashima a crowd. If that was enough to make her feel unwell, she must have been really weak.
その、お友達の男の子に励まされて、なんとか慣れていけるように頑張ろうと思ったんです。
This is kind of nice. I feel like Hishia is getting to see that like Narita is actually doing good while he's at the school. Like obviously he is causing some trouble, but he did go around like helping all the Atsuelos.
へえ、お友達の男の子ですか。桂木様は努力家なのですね。
She rubbed her chest area and took deep breaths. Once she was done with that, it was as though she never felt bad to begin with. A moment later, she put on her glasses again.
私からもお礼をもう一度言わせてもらうよ。手を貸してくれて。
お気遣いなく、困った時はお互い様とこの国では言うと聞いております。
It was as though putting on the glasses gave her a completely different aura. I didn't quite understand what kind of phenomenon this was. Just like Master Narita, Miss Soroko had a special power called a halo, so there are certainly things in this world that a mere maid couldn't understand. Also, it wasn't good to get too involved with the daughter of the enemy.
これからどちらへ？
She answered after taking off her
もう
glasses.
少し街を散策してからスクールに戻るつもりです。今日はありがとうございました、メイドさん。
You're welcome, Soroko.
では、イシアはそろそろおいとまして、最高おいしい食事どころを探すセンチメンタルジャーニーに戻ります。桂木様、お気をつけて。
はい、メイドさんも。
She realized I was about to stand up and leave and said her goodbye. She was as nice as Master Narita had told me.
空子様と偶然にお会いした翌日の深夜。正確に述べると、日付はさらに一つ変わっていました。成田様と共に、桂木屋敷を再び眼下に臨みます。
肥えた土ほど草深いという、あまたの血と恨みを吸って育った呪われた木よ。おののけ、今宵お前の埋葬した怒りと憎悪がふさわしい結末をもたらすのだ。このあまりに無慈悲な復讐劇、その第2幕を始めよう。
はい、成田様。結局、空子様とお会いしたことは、我が主にはお伝えしませんでした。
燃える屋敷、崩れ落ちる過去、また一つ憎悪の生産が終わる。
I am really enjoying seeing this from her perspective. It really like changes some of the events. Like we didn't realize that she had already met like Soroko then. Kind of a interesting little detail. I wonder if that will create any problems later.
第2幕が終わった。残る舞台はあと2つ。
I wonder, like, is this going based on like Saku's route where everyone's gonna end up dying? Are we gonna see like see all of her actions later when like Kurofune attacks her and stuff like that? I'm curious how far this is gonna go. Everything was going as planned. A few days had passed since the second act ended, however, there was suddenly something unexpected happening. That night, Saku Otonashi and I were avoiding the academy security as we snuck outside.
お久しぶりです、おとなし様。
Hishia, who had called here ahead of time, greeted us with a bow.
学園の外に抜け出して何をするのかと思えば。
Well, if I would have held my thoughts for like a few more seconds, I probably would have realized, like, oh, this is probably in Saku's route. Saku was the insignia of the crown. She protected the Academy's peace and order, while Shinobu Narita was an avenger who opposed it. Normally, us cooperating would be like the burned-down forest, just uprooting and moving. One of the crowns, Mitori Kabutayama, had vanished from the Academy some time ago. Officially, she had urgent business back at home, so urgent in fact that she couldn't even leave with any goodbye messages. Saku Otonashi couldn't accept that. It wasn't like she rejected the reality of her friend just disappearing like that, she just couldn't accept it because she knew Mitori well enough to know that she would never do this. Maybe it could have been a flaw in her perception of her, or perhaps they weren't as close as she believed. Saku Otonashi rejected those ideas. She believed that she saw herself in the days she spent with Mitori and chose to find out the truth. Basically, she was going against the Academy's official message. Every effect had an equal and opposite effect, and Saku Otonashi's actions quickly led to a response. It had taken the shape of an accident in school which happened just a couple hours ago. It seemed quite clear that there was someone behind it. It was best to assume that it was a warning against Saku Otonashi, who was coming too close to the Academy's secrets. Some things didn't add up, and I thought it reasonable to assume that this was the truth. If it hadn't been there by chance, the accident could have brought about a horrible situation. That event united the Avenger and the Academy's shining star in the cause of exposing the truth. That was why Saku was here. Almost dying had left her shocked, but I let her rest in my room before leading her outside of the academy.
改めて紹介しよう。Hishia Mori。私に仕える優秀な次女だ。
Best girl meet second best girl.
マジ久しぶりでございます。イシア、ご主人の顔は見飽きておりますが、おとなし様とこんな形で再会できるとは思っておりませんでした。
For tonight, I would introduce them and ask Hishia to investigate something. Since it wasn't easy for us to leave the academy and operate outside for long, I had to rely on my little maid for this.
では、今夜のところは一足先に、ヒシア、
Hishiaも十分に気をつけるよ。
It was more or less the time that Kurofune and his goons would become aware of the existence of the Avenger. The remaining two wouldn't be easy enemies, and the difficulty would be on another level.
ご心配なく、すべては台本通りに。むしろ、ご主人様のボケボケぶりが、イシア、多分に心配です。
Understanding what she meant, I nodded. My capable maid turned around without even waiting for my words and took the van back to town.
成田は何の目的でここに来たの？
Saku asked me that as though she was waiting for Hishia to leave. This had an air of interrogation.
私はエトワール、クラウンの筆頭。この学園を守る者。この学園を正すために真実を突き止めてみせる。
Her eyes fixed right on me were so void of hesitation that it was
で
dazzling.
は、成田真理。あなたの目的は何？それが学園に災いをもたらすなら、きっと私は捨てておけない。
I mean, to be fair, Taigi probably screwed up everything more than he did.
私もかつて犯された過ちを正すために来た。それがこの学園に加わった理由だ。これが今話せる最大限だ。
Saku gave me a challenging glare which I tried to avoid. She averted her gaze only when the flowing clouds hid the moon above. Saku was beautiful, not just in appearance but also in nature. She had the shining will needed to face trouble, pain, and fear. That was exactly why Shin and Narita couldn't go any further than this. In the shadow of the night clouds, I saw a glimpse of an impossible dream. If I wasn't an Avenger but a person, and perhaps I could have fallen for this beautiful girl. I returned to the academy as fast as I could. Carrying Saku like a princess, I used Chip Colley's steps to pass the academy's walls and return to the dorm without anyone realizing we were gone. It was very late at night and most people were peacefully sleeping now. The lights in the dorm had completely vanished. Since I was holding her, Saku's face was close and it felt like she was pondering something. Knowing her position as the insignia and her will to defy the academy, it was only natural to be conflicted.
見てみたまえ。星空も国に似るものなのかな。この国の星空はどこか穏やかな柔らかさがある。
成田はずっと海外暮らしだったんだっけ？南半球？あっちの空の方が綺麗だとか聞くけれど、どうなのかしら。
さまざまな星空を見上げたが、私にはこの夜空が一番好もしいようだ。懐かしさのせいかもしれないが。
あなたも生まれは日本なのよね。故郷の空か。でも突然、どうしてそんな話を？
空は世界のどこからでも見上げられる。さまざまな顔を見せてくれる。その雄大さ、複雑さに比べれば、人の一生などちっぽけなものではないかね。
それって。
あまり思い悩みすぎるなということだ。思慮深さは褒められるべきものだが、時には頭よりも心が世界を動かすことがある。
もしかして成田、私のこと励ましてくれてる？
そんなおこがましいことはしないとも。あえて言うなら、うつむいている君よりも
あなたって本当に変人。
She finally smiled again. I was really glad that I was able to save her. I was an Avenger, but it appeared that I still had a human side to me. After all, I had the heart to love what was beautiful.
本当にサクの素晴らしい豊満を救えてよかった。あの神の父が失われるのは世界の損失だ。
口に出して言うな、この変態。
Especially late at night, too. I went and spoke my honest thoughts, which caused her to snap in spite of it being late night.
もうここまで来たら一人で行けるから降ろして。いつまでも抱いてないでやらしい。
まるで私を生来の変質者のように。侵害だ。
だってそうだし。
Dang, that hurts. I didn't quite agree with that, but I wouldn't argue tonight. I put her on the ground as if I had brought her out of a carriage returning from a ball. That was what I was about to do, but first I lightly shook her, and oh, très bien. They shook so beautifully. Mankind, feast your eyes upon this. They jiggle with the slightest movement.
どうして降ろしてくれないの？
あとしばらく君のビビしく神々しい豊満を堪能してからね。
He's always got his mind on the boobs. Boobs on his mind. Sokka let out a long sigh and...
今すぐ死んじゃえ、この変態！
That was the acceptable course of action there. Apparently it wasn't agreeable. Left alone in my room, I tried stabilizing my mind and body using the breathing of Geb, but I was actually having trouble focusing.
精度は6部というところか。
Everything that Shinri Narita was supposed to accomplish was going smoothly so far. The second act was done and we were moving towards the climax. And the one thing bothering me was, as the time was drawing closer was... You know, these are all good answers, right? You know, Saku, of course. Boobs. Saku once again, right? And Hishia. I'm guessing we're supposed to pick the Hishia one, considering we're on Hishia's route. And I would like to eventually end up with Hishia, but we'll see. By that I meant Hishia. Not her breast, however. She was beautifully bountiful as well, but that wasn't what I had to address this time. Hishia as she was tonight appeared to be the same as ever. I could tell that something was different. Was she perhaps worrying about something?
随分と変わったものだ。
Our first meeting felt like a very distant past now. It was a time when I was still inexperienced and had no power. Back then, there was an enemy I'd killed by the drive of my own hatred. The cause was a single girl.
よく覚えている。
I put my hand on my left shoulder as though to pull the past to me. A work of art made and refined as a gun, she was more precise than a machine, sharper than a blade and faster than a bullet. However, when I saw her from up close, she seemed profoundly sad. True machines didn't feel sadness, mere blades would be complete by just being welded, and bullets didn't think about anything besides going forward. In her eyes, however, I saw something that didn't fit those templates. It was why I wanted to save her, despite not knowing how weak I was or the true meaning of battle.
悔いているわけではないのだよ。
All that had happened were the inevitabilities, a part of the process to make Shinra and Narita complete. The reason why I didn't break before the cruelty of the world was Hishia's presence. She taught me that every action could produce results. Her presence told me that there were things I could gain. I was giving her an obscene amount of trouble. Without her, the path walked by Shinra and Narita would have been far more difficult. Hishia always supported me through thick and thin. In a way, it seemed like fondness on her part.
受け入れられるわけがない。だからせめて。
Hishia's squint and faint smile had grazed my heart so much that it gave me a strange pain. I was giving out a silent prayer, and selfish as it was, it came out very clear.
君の歩む先に幸多からんことを。
I went out to the living room for a change of pace. I couldn't control myself well, and I knew well that at times like this it was best to renew yourself. I reached to turn on the light, only to realize it was already on.
ふむ、エルか。こんな遅くまで夜更かしかね。
こっちのセリフです。てめえこそ何をしているのですか？
No, what are you doing here, Arrow? This is Hishia's route. You're not supposed to be out here. Arrow was already in the living room. The bean lover here might have suddenly felt like drinking a cup of coffee.
私は気分転換だが、君はもしかするとコーヒーをむさぼり食うために来たのだろうか。
Wait, do people just actually eat coffee beans?
コーヒーは飲むものですが、まあ、それも悪くないですね。
Okay, I was gonna say, like, I don't care how much you love beans, who out there is trying to eat coffee?
ということはそうではないと。
ニトリがいなくなってザクがへこんで空子もしばらくお休みなので、なんだか前より静かな量が落ち着かなくて。
Oh yeah, I can only imagine. Lots happened. Indeed, when Sorako learned about her parents' death, she actually collapsed due to shock and was now recovering in the hospital here in the academy. There was something even more shocking in what Eru just said, though. I slowly blinked to let myself process it. Apparently, Eru was feeling lonely. A girl who so readily spoke her emotions was now feeling lonely. The Eru I knew would have never said something like that. Was she now so friendly that she actually showed how she felt? Had she gone through something that made her shed some kind of thick skin? Regardless, a maiden spreading her wings was a cause for celebration. Thus I picked words that gave her due respect to her soul.
なるほど。君も寂しいと思うことがあるのだね。こういう時、ママのおっぱいでも吸ってろという定型句があるそうだが、代わりに私の乳首などどうだろう。
Narita, I've literally never heard anybody say that as a solution to anything. I undid the front of my clothing and lied down on the sofa in a slovenly way. Eru stared at me with eyes like that of a fish, but then...
もちろん。
おう。
Ew! What the frick? She did it. She sucked at my nipple with a passion as hot as magma and the intensity of violence. It made me let out a sound. What the frick?
キモい。
What the heck, game? What is going on?
男というクソ生き物はどうして女子の乳を揉んだり吸ったりするのが人生そのものみたいな顔をするのですか？
こう育み愛を築く。女の胸は男には永遠に届かない神秘だ。
I don't know. I mean, breasts are kind of nice for that purpose. They do help raise children. That is true. And there seems to be some connection between big breasts and, you know, more milk, which I don't think is true, actually, but...
しかし自分で提案しておいてなんだが、二度とするまいと私は誓ったよ。
Are you talking about letting someone suck on your nipple? Because that was pretty weird, my guy. That was pretty weird. I looked away from her like a married lady who was forcibly being approached by her boss and fixed my clothes.
死ぬほどキモいので今後二度と絶対マジやめてください。
Hey, you're the one who took us up on the offer. That was a joke. Arrow looked at me like I was trash, then began preparing coffee. That's like the best way to look at Narita, because, you know, it's kind of true in some ways. Not the instant kind, but the one that started with grinding beans.
豆を愛しているのだね。
そう、金時豆はラブですが、コーヒーも豆なので紅茶よりも価値があります。
ふむ。どうして君はそれほど豆好きなのか。
聞きたいですか？聞きたいですね。では教えましょう。それはですね、実はおっと準備ができたので解説はまたの機会に。
Oh, what the frick? I wanted to know. The fact that she left me hanging like this only made me more curious. What if this kept me awake at night? Although Eru rarely prepared coffee herself, her skill was matched by few. Thankfully, she was making some for me as well. I would use the smell of caffeine to stabilize my heart. Isn't it like super late at night right now? What the? And then Taigi's here too. Why is everyone waking up at this time of night?
Taigi.
When Eru began warming up the cups, Taigi appeared and walked down the steps. This man, Taigi Mikado, had joined us in the dorm as a new Etola, as though replacing Mitori. Needless to say, he was the son of Kurofune Mikado, and thus the fact that he joined the dorm meant he had some sort of goal here. Or perhaps he just transferred here to stabilize the crowns and make sure that Mitori's absence didn't make them break.
もう一つ。
Not even asking him anything, Eru began warming up another cup.
成田も眠れないのかい？
おおむねそのようなところだ。
The exchange was short, but there was a strange feeling of solidarity in it. It was odd because he might have been an enemy to me. Was this what it was meant to share a dorm with someone? It made me feel kind of peace I hadn't felt in 7 years, as well as bliss that didn't seem to belong. When Arrow finished warming up the cups and set the filter, 2 doors opened up on the 2nd floor and out came Saku and Tamao. Okay, we're just having everyone out here, apparently.
みんなこんな時間に。
I don't know, I could ask you the same thing. Saku's hair was messy, making me guess that she might have slept a bit after coming back from the outside.
おいおい、勢ぞろいして何やってんだよ。
Tamao had been born with sharp senses, so she'd probably awoken when she heard us make noise here.
さらに2つ追加。
Tamao scratched her head and energetically went down the stairs before turning back to Saku, who looked a bit sleepy. It was late at night and being awake at this time was against the Academy's rules. Normally Saku would say something like,
もう何時だと思ってるの？エルマと一緒になって。
that and make us all return to our rooms, but she didn't say anything and she just went down the stairs. Yeah, she's kind of like, eh, whatever about the rules now.
私にもちょうだい。サク公認だな。
生真面目な筆頭殿にも息抜きが必要ということだね。
After taking out cups for Saku and Tamao too, Arrow finished making coffee for everyone and sat down next to Saku. The smell of coffee filled the dimly lit room.
空子、いつ戻ってこられるのかな。
沖野先生もわからないと言ってました。
Yeah, that's the thing, she doesn't.
HMI ってのは繊細らしいからな。
That is true. That is very true.
すぐに戻れるよ。実家で不幸があったから、それが落ち着くまで1週間か 2週間ぐらいじゃないかな。
Yeah, it's gonna be longer than 1 or 2 weeks. The Atwilas have been exposed to many strange things recently. No one could say anything cheerful, and the more we talked, the heavier the air here became. The sofa that everyone sat on without any planning now had 2 free spaces, the places where Mitori and Soriko once sat.
なるようになるだろう。
Mel tried to act cheerful, but she was obviously fatigued. Though she and Mitori weren't much alike, they still clicked rather well in certain ways. She held back her bashfulness and tried to act normal, though that was her way of being considerate of her fellow dorm mates.
悲しいことがこの世から消えることはないけれど、終わったことにとらわれていては前に進めない。
I will say there's a lot of mention of Mitori in this route. I'm hoping part of this route will kind of be a good segue into her route. Peggy whispered those words.
そうね。今すぐはそんなポジティブになれないけど、でもしっかりしなきゃね。
成田はどう思う？
Back to back once again. Can't get out of this in any route we're in. Peggy wasn't talking to Saku. His gaze was on me since the start. It wasn't unlikely that he knew the true identity of Shinri Narita.
もっともだな、大義。我々が迎えるのは過去ではなく未来のみだ。
The foreshadowing. Indeed, there was nothing to gain from revenge. Indeed, it was best to look at the future instead of the past. There was no lie in there. Despite that Shinri Narita would rebel against this justice, it was too late for me to change the path I walked.
過去に絡め取られたものはやがて失意の中で過去に裏切られて殺される。
I mean, to be fair, Taigi, you're probably the one that holds on to the past the most, since you literally know of the existence of somebody from the past who's not supposed to be alive. I mean, we are kind of killing people for what happened in the past too, though. So, I don't know, can I really say anything? Is Taigi really worse than Narita in this regard? I don't know, y'all are both holding on to the past.
成田はそうならないことを祈っているよ。
それがお前の予言なら残念ながら今回は当たらないな。人生とは己という神を掘り上げるための巡礼だ。
探すんじゃなくて？
探して見つかるものではないだろう。旅路の終わりに完成を見る。人間の価値は終わった後でどう語られるかだ。その過程のすべては真。偽りの入り込む余地はない。裏切るものがあるとすれば過去ではなく己自身だ。己の魂を裏切った時。
Taigi nodded and looked away.
成田ってごく稀にまともなこと言うから困るわ。
Yeah, Saku, it is kind of annoying how he flips like that. It's like he's a character that's like really perverted, and so you want to like dislike him for just being like overly out there sometimes. But then he says these really like meaningful, insightful, you know, literally looking into your heart type things. And it's like, can I really dislike Narita? I was really conflicted when we first started this game. I was like, oh my gosh. I was just like very back and forth on how I felt about him.
まともじゃなくてまともっぽいです。普段は寮内徘徊する魔人父同行のくせに哲学ぶったらおつもよく見えると思うな。ったく眠くなる話しやがって。
How were you trying to go to sleep? You just had coffee. The exchanges continued on. Once Saku placed down her empty cup, Ero asked if she wanted another.
もう一杯飲みますか？
ううん、ありがとう。
Saku gave Ero a smile, then put her hands on her knees and made a cheerful voice.
さあ、暗いのは今夜のうちにやりきって明日からまた頑張りましょう。空子が療養中の分クラウンの仕事は増えるんだから。ああ、またしんどくなるな。たまお、そんなこと言わないの。みんなで頑張りましょう。エルも大義も成田も。
The cup of coffee had blown away Saku's gloom. She gave them encouraging words, not saying anything that would make them feel like she was challenging the academy. It was so that she wouldn't involve them. She also gave me a glance that carried a lot of meaning. Her bravery made me want to say something back, but I held it back. Soriko's state was Shinu Narita's doing. One of the shadows cast over the storm was yours truly. I didn't have any words I could say in response to her cheer.
そういえばこの前成田のところのメイドさんに会いましたよ。
As though to help Saku, Ero presented a new topic. It was strange that this emotionally lacking girl would bring life to the conversation.
シアさんのこと？
そうです。ヒッシーです。
Is she? That's a new one.
メイドはいいね。成田のお月のメイドとは一度顔を合わせたことがあるよ。まだ奥島に滞在しているとは知らなかった。
成田のメイドね。俺会ったことねえし。
Yet, Mal, you probably had the least chances to meet her.
しかし、メイドに最も必要なのは平坦さだと僕は思う。噂の彼女はどうなのかな？
You're wrong.
悲しいことになっていなければいいのだけれど。
You're totally wrong, Taigi, as always. Frickin', I can't believe there was a point where I started liking you a little bit. I was like, oh, Taigi's not too bad of a character, right? No, I was totally wrong. Totally wrong, and this just proves it.
大義、その発言は太陽が地球の周りを回っていると言い出すのにも等しい。世界の真実に対する挑戦だ。
I like how Narita just takes so much offense to that. He's like, you pretty much just said you're a flat earther, and that's totally wrong.
同感だね。君の美というものについての感化しがたい冒涜はいずれ何としても改めさせねばならないと僕は感じているんだよ。
Taigi's like, you know what? Just because you freaking said that and went against flatness, I'm going to release your sister who is going to try to kill you, okay? Like, just watch me. Taigi's just like threatening Narita. I'm gonna bring back your lost sister who you thought was dead, but is actually alive and is actually willing to kill everybody. Just because you said that flatness is wrong.
どっちも頭おかしいのはよくわかったから、おとなしくコーヒーを楽しんでなさい。
ふむ。ところで彼女は相変わらずたくましくやっていたかね。
I met Hishia regularly, but I had to play along here.
はい。成田の愚痴を言ってました。
Yep, that's Hishia.
あれは愚痴ではなく、彼女なりの主に対する親愛と忠誠の表現なのだよ。
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah, that's totally what it is.
どうだか成田みたいな変人に付き合うメイドさんも大変ですね。
Hishia and Ero had a somewhat similar aura. She enjoyed talking about the meeting, which made me think it was pleasant. The two must have gotten along. Perhaps she could follow her own future if she had more friends.
全くだ。ヒシアにはいつも苦労をかけている。
I went and answered honestly, and my words made Ero and Saku both shocked to the core.
成田が他人のことを
気にかけているなんて。
They're like, burn it with fire. Their eyes were open wide, and you could probably fit a fist in their mouths. Their expressions were exactly the same. Saku staggered, and Ero backed away.
君たちは私を何だと思っているのかね。
A deviant pervert who only thinks of himself.
変態。
I was close. The master and her knight were unified in verbally abusing me.
おとなし様とお会いした数日後、またもや駅前にて高崎様と出会いました。ばったりです。
Dang, Ero was in town a lot. I didn't realize
高
that.
崎様はどことなく自分と似たところを感じてしまうキャラです。超優秀な中心とかそういう。
ヒッシーとはすでにマブなので、もうエルチョンヌでいいですよ。
Okay, that's another new name. There, that was another way in which we were
で
alike.
はエル様、本日も遠征ですか？
I was actually returning from an investigation, but I didn't say that, of course. I was once again investigating Tokeno Yomase and Kurofune Mikudo's circumstances in preparation for the third and final act both. I'd known this since before we came to Japan, but they were extremely well guarded. Through my hard work, I'd also found out there was a certain non-political group behind them and came across a certain title, GD, which stood for Geheimnis Doctrine. Interesting. During the process, 2 cars were destroyed, a paper company was blown up by local terrorists, and there was 3 illegal investigators and crackers I hired. And the 3 illegal investigators and crackers I hired took a trip to the seabed. It's a world where it's foggy, even if just an inch ahead. How unpleasant.
もちのろんです。ヒッシーは本日もメイドの美食ですか？
本日もメイドの美食です。
Yeah, something like that. Perhaps these encounters happen because a mysterious power was pulling us in the exact same way. We entered a bookstore. Miss Arrow went straight to the novel corner, specifically the area full of flat, eye-catching books, novels on the lighter side.
自分は日常系コメディを重点的に攻める口なのです。しかし昨今はコメディはどこのジャンルでもいまいち弾けないのだとか。
コメディが不人気なのですか。エロスと笑いは古来エンターテインメントの基本かとヒシア思いましたけれど。
Dang, we're losing one of the pillars. It's unpopular now.
不人気かどうかは市場の流れもありますので一概には言えません。現在の傾向というだけでしょう。
Yeah, remember when isekais were really popular? That was the trend, and there was like a billion of them.
ですが、それ以前の大きな問題として、現在ははっきり言って過剰供給。熱心な読者でも出ているすべてのシリーズをチェックするのは到底不可能。
Yeah, it's kind of funny. Back when I used to watch a lot of anime, it felt like there was just never enough good shows. And now, like, it almost feels like there's too many good shows sometimes. It's like, how do you watch them all? I mean, I just don't really watch much anime nowadays, so I probably have missed a few good shows here and there.
となると、自分で読んで確かめる以前に、ネームバリューやイラスト、メディア展開の露出度など、多くのフィルターを通さずにはおられない。
I mean, I also tend to play a lot more visual novels than I did in the past, and that kind of takes up my anime slot, you know? Like, I mean, I still watch some stuff. I'm caught up on Attack on Titan and, you know, My Hero Academia, but, like, I haven't really watched a lot of, like, single shows, you know? Ones that just, like, are kind of new. I watch things I've watched for years. Yep, that's true. I wasn't knowledgeable about this, but her immensely pained expression told me this was a serious problem that couldn't be solved in a day or two.
というわけで、ジャンルそのものへのお布施として自分はコメディを絨毯爆撃的に買い込むのです。
Look at Arrow, holding up the industry.
経済とはラブと並ぶ宇宙最強のパワーの一つ。売り上げが良ければシリーズ化もされ、新刊だってワシワシ出るのです。今は種でしかない無数の作品の中にいつか夕日する可能性は必ず眠っているのですから。
Yeah, I suppose that's true. I would imagine there's a few shows that were like okay at the start, and then as they got more funding and more popularity, like they got a lot better. I also know some shows that the opposite happened. I feel like if you've ever watched Naruto, I feel like Naruto started off, you know, good for a long time, and then it hit this peak where it got really good, right? Or it had these moments that were really good, and then by the end it like just kind of ended very poorly. It just was dragged out for so long, and I feel like the animation got worse. Like it just got more like, I don't know, like blander looking. Like I'm not really sure how to say it. And Boruto has the same problem for me. It's very bland looking. There's not much detail. Miss Aru nodded and picked up many works after only looking at the covers. She must have been the type to look them up beforehand, then come here to retrieve them. Miss Aru took so many books it seemed too much for her compact body, so I decided to help.
この機会に新聞屋も開拓しようと思ってるのですが、メイドさんは何かおすすめありますか?
Well, if you want a genre recommendation, my personal favorite is anything to do with time travel. I really like the element of time travel. I think it makes for an interesting story. That's kind of why Steins Gate is like my favorite visual novel. But you know, there's other good works too.
ヒシアのおすすめですか? なかなか難しい質問ですね。
Let's see, if I was going to recommend something other than time travel. I don't know, all my favorite things have to do with time travel. I don't want to say too many of my favorite works have time travel because I feel like that's a spoiler. But I mean, I like The Melancholy of Haruhi Suzumiya. That I would say has time travel in it for sure. That one's really good. The question came out of nowhere, so I had to rack my head a bit to look through my memories. Books I'd read in my life were few and far between. I lived a long time with few kinds of entertainment.
シア、軽小説には詳しくないのですが、こういう本も文化的に近いのではないでしょうか。
Oh, I guess some other light novels I liked. I mean, I like Spice and Wolf. I still have yet to finish the light novels. I do own quite a few of them. Definitely need to get through those one day. We'll see if I do. I just don't really read much anymore. I read, like, visual novels, of course, but I don't really read, like, actual just books. Like, I like to... I don't know. I like to have more visuals, I guess, rather than just imagining like I did as a kid. Let's see, what other light novels? I like the, Is It Wrong to Pick Up a Girl in a Dungeon? I like those light novels. Those were good. I'll have to keep thinking.
ほほう。剣豪小説です。特にこの某有名作家によるシリーズもの、剣客マーケティングなど。
I introduced her to a book I'd picked up and read while looking through Master Narita's things. It was a historical novel set in Japan. Back then, Japan was a place I'd never been to, so stories set in the land where Master Narita came from greatly interested me.
一見パッとしないのに、実は最強パワーの主人公とか、ものすごいツンデレ武家娘などが出てくるお話です。軽小説という文化に近いのではないかと。
Yeah, I would say so.
俺つえにツンデレですか。ポイント高いですね。コミカライズできそうですね。
Or a visual novel, like this one.
あと、かなりエッチーです。ピンクです。
その上エッチーですか。これは深夜枠ですね。謎光線ビシバシで無修正版円盤がバカ売れですね。
Alright, if we're talking about manga, I think my favorite manga would either have to be Future Diaries manga. I really like that one a lot. The artwork and just obviously I love the story to it. Let's see. My other favorite would have to be The World God Only Knows. The manga for that was really good. I really like that one. That's actually a manga I finished. I mean, I haven't finished a whole lot, so if I finish it, it's because it was really freaking good. Let's see. A Silent Voice, the manga for that was pretty good too. I actually like that better than the movie, even though the movie has fantastic visuals. I really like the manga a lot. Apparently, Master Narita had begun reading it due to the man who raised him. That man. Looking back at it, I should have asked for more about Master Narita. Maybe I would have found something embarrassing from when he was little.
エッチーで思い出しましたが。
My reminiscence was stopped by Miss Era's words.
最近、成田の作へのセクハラが減ったのですよ。視界にサクッパイが入っても即揉みに行かないようになって、ようやく安心と本体が言ってました。
The fact that he was trying to fondle them the moment they entered his sight made me sigh. Perhaps the situation was making it hard for the Bumamek soldier to act like that. He was putting on an act in front of his gentle fellow students and even killed the father of his childhood friend. Even if he didn't hesitate, he could still be hurt, and then the heart could bleed even when the body was unharmed. Even so, he wouldn't cry. That was revenge, a selfish, sinful act. Master Narita could bear all the pain he ever felt.
一刀流切り落とし。
ぐえー。
We then somehow ended up talking about the samurai code and swordsmanship while walking around many of the town's shops right until it was dinner time.
これは困りましたね。もうバスが終わってます。
問題ないです。駅前からゴージャスにタクシーに乗って帰還するまで折り込み済みなのです。
さすがはクラウン1の作詞です。ヒシア。
ふんふんふん。頭脳力の勝利ですね。
I was a bit sad to part, but then it had to happen. Today was somewhat, no, very fulfilling. We'd even set a strange little phrase for our goodbye.
それでは、こ 心は満ち足りている。
いささかも悔ゆるところはない。
It was a goodbye taken from a ninja-based work by the author of the Swordsman marketing
エル
series.
様、お気をつけて。
はい。ではまた。
軽く手を振り合って別れます。タクシーは駅前から大通りを南へ。見えなくなるまで見守っていました。おお、これはもしかするとちょっとしたことに気づきました。ヒシア、もしかしたら友達と呼べる人ができたのかもしれません。
Oh, well, that's sweet. I'm glad like they could become friends.
エル様と楽しいひとときを過ごしてから慌ただしく数日が過ぎていきました。ヒシアの日課はいつもの早朝のメールチェックからです。限られた時間を有効に使うため、画面の右ではオートで新聞記事を流し、メール1、成田様から受け取ったおとなし様の事故を図った犯人の遺留品が若い男性のものと判明。これは予想通り、スクールの学生に敵の手駒が隠れていると推測。メール12、県警内部の情報提供者からアンチハロー面に妙な動きがあるとの知らせ。詳しくは添付の資料を参照。メール27、トルコから中東関連の先取り情報。これは直接関わりなしですが、いくつか関連で値上がりしそうな株の購入を指示。
Dang, freaking Hishia's manipulating the stock market too.
メール40、所有している企業から研究成果の経過報告。ふむ、善と有望そうなので投資を増やしておきましょう。
Dang, and they have their own company. What the heck?
メールを片付けたら次はお掃除の時間です。
Hishia, don't waste a moment. He's doing so many things at once.
本日のお掃除はこれぐらいにしといてやりましょう。無駄に大きい建物というのも厄介ですね。
I mumbled to pick up the cloth and broom. This was more of a hideout than a residence, but it was still a place my master used, and as a maid I had to keep it clean. Right when I took a breather, someone knocked on the entrance. The thick wooden door created a loud sound which resounded throughout the hall several times. Someone entered this church with curtained windows without letting me sense him or even touching the front gate. Who could it be? I checked what was under my magical maid skirt. I replied only after I was confident I could handle whoever came.
ここは新聞じゃないですよ。
新聞ではない。私だ。
It was Master Narita. Him coming here wasn't in our schedule for today, so that was quite unexpected. Did something happen? Would it negatively impact the
テ
plan?
レビは置いてないし、宅配クリーニングは必要ないし、売るようなテレカやブランド品もありませんが。
いいから開けたまえ。
Narita's like, please just let me
仕
in.
方ないですね。特別ですよ。
I undid the lock, opened the door, and bowed.
成田様、おサボりは良くないことかと存じます。
もちろん外出許可は取ってきたとも。
何か問題があったのですか？台本に修正が必要な事態なら詳しく伺いますが。
いや、別に問題はない。そういうわけではないのだ、ヒシア。
It didn't look like something serious had happened. Also, he seemed to be less talkative than usual, which made him look suspicious. Then again, he was always suspicious. Master Narita's unwarranted confidence was one of the charming things about him. Yet now he looked like the Doraemon protagonist who was hiding a test he got 0 on.
ヒシアに何か隠し事ですか？
言われのない非難はやめたまえ。隠し事など何もないとも。
Strange. The way his eyes were wavering was far too suspicious. However, it was strange that he would come here at an unplanned time while hiding something. What was wrong with him? Suddenly, Miss Era's words came back to me.
最近成田の策へのセクハラが減ったのですよ。視界にサクッパイが入っても即揉みに行かないようになって。
That was probably it. That might have been why Master Narita wasn't at his best. It was his bubamine deficiency. It took him over and drove him to unconsciously seek a pair of mounds, which took him here to me in my bountiful chest. That had to be it. I'd been serving him for many years and knew his functions well enough to draw out this conclusion. I knew Master Narita far too well, though I wasn't sure why he wasn't just using Miss Otonashi's breasts instead.
ふむふむ。わかりました。ヒシアは成田様のメイドですから。
I nodded in understanding and he put a hand on the entrance and pointed
時に
outside.
ヒシア、少し街にでも出ないかね。
はい。
As he invited me outside, he seemed less confident than usual, which made me tilt my head in confusion. Ooh, going on a romantic walk with Hishia? I like it. I successfully took Hishia outside. It seemed sudden, but I was concerned about how she would end up, but I felt I had to do this before the final 2 stages began.
それで成田様、本日の要件は何なのですか？
いや、特に要件はない。ここのところスクールの寮内生活を送っているので、時にはヒシアと一緒に食事でもと思ったのだよ。
本当はおっぱい欠乏症ですよね。
君は唐突に何を得体の知れない文言を口走っているのか。
Hishia was wise and capable. Had she actually sensed what was actually bothering me? I was hesitating and conflicted, which in all honesty wasn't like me at all, though I had to accept it in this case. Anyways, we're out in town now, but I didn't know how to begin talking about it. Normally she was the type of person to ask 10 questions before anyone could tell her one thing, so it was particularly difficult to confront her. She was also really stubborn. If I was direct with my question, the answer would be the same as if we were returning from the Katsuragi mansion. If that was really what she wanted, Shinri Narita had no right or reason to stop her, but...
エルが君と会ったと話していた。
This is an interesting little, like, kind of CG, but not CG.
はい。ついこの間もお会いしました。お食事にお買い物にと、なかなかに興味深い時間を共に過ごさせていただいて。
それは良いことだ。友情とは人生を豊かにするスパイスなのだから。
It was a wonderful step forward. Hishia was severely lacking in normal relationships with people besides me.
そう。それでヒシア。
はい。
買い物でもするかね。うん。たまにはそれ以外の服を着てみるなどどうかね。
Oh, yes, please. I mean, I love maid Hishia, don't get me wrong, but I would love to see her in like a normal outfit. That would be cool.
このメイド服以外ですか？成田様、本当におつみで大丈夫ですか？
I myself could feel that I was a lot more awkward and formal than normal. I had trouble speaking, and it was as though my lips were frozen. Strangely, seeing how easy this was supposed to be, I just had to say, once this is all over, live as you like.
何も問題はないと思う。それよりどうだね。年頃の乙女相応のおしゃれなどしてみないかね。
絶対に断じて断固として嫌だと申し上げたら。
Oh, okay. I mean, if you want to stay in the maid outfit.
検討ぐらいはしてみないか。
そこまで着替えさせたいのでしたら、成田様お得意のハムカツなんちゃらでもお使いになって言うこと聞かせればいいでしょう。
Ham, bake, whatever. Dang, she just ripped into your halo, my guy. Ham, bake, whatever. I'm gonna use my ham, bake, whatever 12 on you.
ハムレット12だよ。スクールの分類では。だが、君も知っての通り、私は意志を重んじる人間だ。自分の才能の一部とはいえ、意志を曲げてしまうこの力を好んで使いたいとは思わない。
では成田様が何かヒシアに買い与えてください。
私が？
Alright, let's freaking do it. I'd given her the choice to buy whatever she wanted, yet she insisted on wearing something I chose. Left with no choice, I used my own sense of beauty to choose a set of wonderful clothing that would suit her wonderfully.
よくこのようなコスプレ臭いファミレス風おっぱい強調服が売ってましたね。成田様、さすがおっぱい欠乏症です。
Did he buy her some kind of lewd outfit? She let out a long sigh. Thinking something that emphasized the breast was necessary to make Hishia look as beautiful as possible, but going by her reaction, I might have picked the wrong design. What a shame. I found it lovely.
気に入らないのであれば、これはやめて何か別の服を。
いえ、ヒシア、成田様からのプレゼント、喜んでいただきます。
I would laugh if he just bought her another maid outfit. That would be so funny. She did a 180 and embraced the clothing with a full smile on her face. She then fell silent and it seemed like there was somewhat tense. It made me feel like I was right next to a ticking time bomb.
はい、何でしょうか。
いや、なんではなく、その調子でも悪いのかね。
I hesitantly asked that, which was very unlike me.
いいえ、調子が悪いのは成田様です。
突然何を言い出す。
She was silent one moment, then angry the next. She was so hard to read. A maiden's heart was akin to an autumn sky, and this made me understand that she, too, was a maiden.
こんなこと、プレゼントだなんて、今まで一度もしたことがないのに。
そうだったか。ふむ、そうかもしれないが。
Well, you know, there's a first time for everything, and this is your route, so we need to make you feel special, right?
成田様、やはりおっぱい欠乏症で間違いありません。
Why are you so stuck on that?
私はいつもと変わりないし、豊満が欠乏することなどありえない。なぜなら、豊かな曲線は常に私のここに燃えている。
残念ながら、成田様はイメージだけでおっぱい欲求を満たせられるような安い乳狂いではありません。間違いなく欠乏症です。
I just love her genuine concern for him. He's like, he's not getting enough boobs. He's dying. He needs help. He's going crazy. He gave me a gift, of all things.
だいたい今の私は身近に。
I cut my own words short as I realized that I hadn't fondled Saku's breast in the past few days, not even once.
なぜだ。そんなことがあるはずがない。音楽が恋の糧であるように、豊満とは人類が歓喜へ至る燃料なのだから。
I shivered, making Hishia put on a proud smile.
いっそ手近なところで補給してはいかがですか？
Whoa, why did you say it like that? What are you implying, Hishia? Saying that, she raised her noticeable chest. My will was overwhelmed as my body moved like lightning and almost grabbed one of her mounds. I stopped myself just 2 centimeters away.
やめておこう。そんなものはこの私に必要ないとも。
What in the world is going on with Narita? Not fondling breast? Crazy. That was close. I only barely stopped myself. Gasp. I've never seen him do that. He actually provided some kind of self-restraint.
プレゼントだなんて、こんな真似をされたのは本当に初めてです。明日は空から銃弾でも降ってきかねません。
Absolutely crazy. I mean, giving Hishia a present and then not fondling her breast? Crazy. He's a wild man. Anyways, guys, I am going to end it here so I can have plenty of time to finish up the game next episode. Or, well, finish up this route, I should say. What am I talking about? I'm not finishing the game yet. But I can finish this route, which will be nice. I am very excited to see how they're going to end. Because it already seems to be going a little bit differently. I was like, are they just going to, like, show it exactly the way it happened? But, like, the Hishia parts of it? Or are they going to end it a little bit differently? And it seems like they're going to end it differently. So that's nice. I appreciate that. Hopefully we'll not have the crazy ending like we did in Saku's route. That would be much appreciated. If we could just have a happy end with Hishia, that would be so wonderful. But anyways, guys, I hope you're enjoying this. I will see you in the next one.